Chapter 891. Learn to take care of yourself. My golden bell shield is flawless, unless your level is higher than mine. You're already at the peak of the early phase of Mystic Division at such a young age. TSK, what a genius. Maybe you can surpass me in a few years, but I'm afraid you won't be able to see that day. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Higher level. Higher. Suddenly, a possibility flashed across Lin Yi's mind. Wait, Lin Yi suddenly smiled. He looked at Ma Zhu with a weird smile. He couldn't leave today, so even if he were to die, he would drag someone down with him. Yao Shu. Lin Yi turned around and looked at Meng Yao and Yu Shu. Meng Yao and Yu Shu also noticed that Lin Yi's smile was weird and didn't know what Lin Yi wanted to do. You have to learn to take care of yourself in the future. Lin Yi smiled. Meng Yao and Yu Shu paused, not understanding why Lin Yi would say something like that at a time like this. However, Lin Yi didn't explain. In the next moment, Lin Yi raised his head and looked at Ma Zhu. What a joke. He had been looking for Ma Zhu's weakness but couldn't find it. He didn't expect Ma Zhu to expose his weakness in the end. What are you laughing at? Ma Zhu froze. Lin Yi's smile gave him goosebumps. Wah, Master Ma. This brat was preparing for his death. Zhen Yingjun suddenly laughed. He was the first to understand what Lin Yi meant. Meng Yao and Yu Shu immediately understood after Zhen Yingjun reminded them. Was Lin Yi preparing for his death? Lin Yi, go. Don't care about us, go. Meng Yao shouted at Lin Yi crazily. However, Lin Yi turned a deaf ear to him. A strange smile hung on his face, and his hands were in an extremely strange position. Tears blurred Meng Yao's vision. She didn't expect Lin Yi to die for her and Shu. The young lady shouted at Lin Yi hoarsely. You idiot! I gave you 30,000 yuan, and you went to die. No wonder Zhen Yingjun called you an idiot, you big idiot. Yu Shu held Meng Yao's hand tightly, not saying a word. Although she was usually carefree, she was extremely anxious at this moment. Humph, it seems like you have some awareness. Ma Zhu laughed. Don't worry, go to hell. We won't touch those two little girls. We'll let them leave safely. Lin Yi didn't say anything. His hands were still in a very strange position. No one knew what he was doing. What? What do you mean by that? Do you still want to perform a heroic deed before you die? Ma Zhu looked at Lin Yi in confusion. His tone was filled with impatience. Lin Yi had worn out all his patience. He couldn't wait to kill Lin Yi in the next second. Even if I die, I want to die in a grand way. I'm going to attack. The smile on Lin Yi's face slowly disappeared as he walked towards Ma Zhu step by step. Attack? Haha. All right, since you want to attack, no problem. Ma Zhu wasn't afraid of Lin Yi. As a master of the 8th level of the Golden Shield, he didn't put Lin Yi in his eyes at all. Lin Yi's movements suddenly sped up. He rushed towards Ma Zhu, but his hands were still in the strange position. Ma Zhu's lips curved into a mocking smile. Have you played too much Street Fighter? But I have to say your move before you die looks pretty grand. As he spoke, Ma Zhu swung his right fist, ready to take Lin Yi's strange move. Grand? Maybe. What's even more grand is yet to come. Lin Yi's lips curved into a determined smile. He suddenly put his hands together and pushed them out. It looked like a move from Street Fighter. Ma Zhu's fist was about to hit Lin Yi's palms. He was about to hit Lin Yi. However, at this moment, something happened. A loud boom sounded like a detonator exploding between Ma Zhu and Lin Yi, along with the earth-shattering sound of thunder. A strong heat wave pushed Lin Yi away. The huge explosion reverberated in the valley. Zhen Yingjun was shocked, and Meng Yao and Yu Shu were also shocked speechless. The heat wave from the explosion made Meng Yao and Yu Shu breathless, even though they were far away. Zhen Yingjun was pushed to the ground by the heat wave. Although General Wei Wu was in a better condition than the three of them, he still stared blankly at the direction of the explosion. At the place where Lin Yi and Ma Zhu stood, dust flew everywhere. The sky was filled with flying sand and stones. They couldn't see what happened. The destructive energy shook the entire mountain. No one knew what happened. Zhen Yingjun opened his mouth wide. and stared at the place where the explosion happened. He hoped that it was the shock brought by Ma Zhu killing Lin Yi. However, Zhang Yingjun didn't know why, but he felt that something was wrong. He felt that there was something wrong with this. How could Ma Zhu cause such a huge commotion? But if it wasn't Ma Zhu, was it Lin Yi? That was even more impossible, right? Yao Yao sis, where's Shield Bro? Will he be okay? Yushu stared at the scene of the explosion blankly. She sounded sad. Meng Yao didn't say anything. She didn't know what kind of feeling she had in her heart. Did it happen? Did it finally happen? Did Lin Yi die with his opponent? That was the only thought in Meng Yao's mind. Lin Yi's words seemed to be ringing in her ears, telling them to take care of themselves in the future. In the next moment, he disappeared. No, Meng Yao couldn't accept the reality in front of her. Lin Yi couldn't die. However, at this moment, Meng Yao lost her voice. She didn't know what to say, and she didn't know what to say, things that exceeded her expectations. It was too much. She had never experienced a life and death parting like this. At this moment, her fragile heart was broken. The flying sand and pebbles that filled the sky finally dissipated slowly. The dust in the air also became lighter and lighter. Amidst the scattered pebbles, a figure stood upright. Although he was not tall, his entire body was emitting a formidable aura. His shirt had already been torn to shreds, and his exposed upper body was covered with streaks of blood. It was a ghastly sight. It seemed like a gust of wind could blow him down, but when the wind blew, the figure still stood straight. Chapter 892. Energy Bomb, huh? Meng Yao looked at the messy figure and laughed. Humph, I knew this guy wouldn't die. He's just a liar. Oh, Yao Yao sis, you don't mean what you said. You were so nervous just now. Yushu exposed Meng Yao's lie. Meng Yao glared at Yushu and ignored her. Zhang Yingjun was dumbfounded. Where was Ma Zhu? Where did Ma Zhu go? A master with golden bell shield at the peak of the middle phase of Mystic Division. How did he disappear all of a sudden? Zhang Yingjun widened his eyes and searched the area. However, other than Lin Yi, Ma Zhu was nowhere to be seen. After a while, another figure climbed up from the ruins. This person was Ma Zhu. However, Ma Zhu looked horrifying at this moment. Half of his arm was completely gone, and his ribs were completely caved in. It could be said that the right half of his body had become a pile of rotten meat. Even the right side of his face was no longer recognizable. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no one else here, no one would be able to recognize that this person was Ma Zhu. Fresh blood flowed out of his wound, and his white bones could be vaguely seen. What the hell? That's amazing. He's not dead, even after being blown up like this. Yushu was surprised at Ma Zhu's tenacious vitality. Ma Zhu's eyes were filled with astonishment. He no longer had the arrogance from before. He couldn't believe that he was actually injured, and it was so serious. It was too miserable. How is this possible? He was a master with the 8th level of Golden Bell Shield, and Lin, he was only a spiritual master at the peak of the early phase of Mystic Division. How could he hurt him? Ma Zhu could proudly say that normal bullets wouldn't be able to hit him, but now, he was injured, and it was a very serious injury. The right half of his body was blown up. His right arm was gone, and even his entire shoulder was gone. The right side of his face was a bloody mess, and his right leg was only left with white bones. He was barely able to stand up now. Impossible. Impossible. This can't be real. You can't hurt me. Ma Zhu couldn't believe it. He really couldn't. Idiot. Lin Yi glanced at Ma Zhu indifferently. I already told you that I was going to use my ultimate skill, but you didn't dodge it. Do you think you have a lot of HP? Impossible. This is impossible. Ma Zhu was going crazy. He couldn't accept the reality in front of him. Although Lin, he looked to be in a sorry state. Although Lin, he had a lot of wounds on his body, he didn't lose an arm or a leg. As for himself, Ma Zhu couldn't accept it. His golden bell shield's 8 layers were all destroyed in an instant. His many years of cultivation and his childhood dreams were all shattered at this moment. The body of a physical master was as important as the meridians of an internal master. Once the body was heavily injured, even if it recovered, it would be impossible to regain its previous strength. Especially for someone like Ma Zhu, whose entire body was blown to pieces, his golden bell shield was completely broken. Even if the body recovered, the newly grown flesh and skin would be no different from before. It would be no different from an ordinary person. Even if there was a little bit of golden bell shield left on the left side of his body, what use would it be? If he went out to fight, could he stop the enemy from attacking his right side? Lenny didn't bother with Ma Zhu anymore. He had to scare Ma Zhu and Zhun Yingjun away as soon as possible. He knew his own strength. He was only able to stand up now with his last breath. His entire body was like a crossbow. The attack just now was the result of Lin Yi sucking out all the energy in his body, compressing it and releasing it in an instant. Lin Yi had tested this kind of energy bomb on Yukuan once, and it was quite effective. However, the amount of energy used to destroy Yukuan's meridians was far less than what he used today. This time, it was Lin Yi's crazy and risky decision. He had no other choice but to do it. Ma Zhu was a practitioner of the Golden Bell Shield. No matter what kind of attack Lin Yi used, it was useless against him. Even sneak attacks and assassinations were useless because Ma Zhu wasn't afraid of being attacked at all. Just when Lin Yi was anxious and helpless after being poisoned, Ma Zhu exposed his weakness and said something. Perhaps Ma Zhu didn't think there was anything wrong with what he said, but it gave Lin Yi a huge inspiration. Ma Zhu said that the Golden Bell Shield was flawless unless Lin Yi's level was higher than his. From Ma Zhu's perspective, Lin Yi's strength couldn't be higher than his. If Lin Yi was, he would have won a long time ago. However, Lin Yi didn't think so. Although his strength wasn't as high as Ma Zhu's, after the energy was compressed, the power it produced was multiplied. Ma Zhu had the Golden Bell Shield to protect his body. Lin Yi couldn't use the energy to destroy Ma Zhu's internal organs and meridians like what he did to Yukuan. He could only use a bigger explosion of energy to destroy Ma Zhu's body. Lin Yi wasn't sure if this method would work, and he wasn't sure what kind of negative consequences it would bring to him. This was because even if he quickly retreated the moment he released the energy, the remaining energy from the explosion could still affect him. In order to injure Ma Zhu, Lin Yi had no choice but to use the last bit of energy in his body. With the thought of success or failure, he released the scariest energy bomb in history. Fortunately, he succeeded. Ma Zhu was crippled by the explosion. His Golden Bell Shield was directly destroyed by his own energy. However, even so, the defense of Ma Zhu's Golden Bell Shield still made Lin Yi speechless. Lin Yi knew clearly how powerful the energy bomb was. There was a deep pit in front of them. The cut was smooth and straight, as if it was cut by a sharp sword. The rock was like that, but Ma Zhu was only injured and not dead. Lin Yi didn't know if Ma Zhu still had the ability to fight, but he knew that he didn't. If it wasn't for his strong willpower, he wouldn't be able to last until now, let alone stand up. However, he had to stand up and pretend that he wasn't injured. He had to scare Ma Zhu and Zhun Yingjun away. Otherwise, he, Meng Yao, and Yushu would all be in danger. So, Lin Yi ignored Ma Zhu and turned to Zhun Yingjun. He said coldly, "Now it's your turn." Chapter 893. How about juice? Don't come near me. Zhun Yingjun stepped back subconsciously. Suddenly, he saw Meng Yao and Yushu from the corner of his eyes. He quickly pulled out a gun from his waist and sprinted over, aiming at Meng Yao. "Don't come over. Surrender now, or I'll kill her." Lin Yi was stunned. He didn't expect Zhun Yingjun to react so violently. He must be scared out of his wits. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly. Did he overshoot himself? He wanted to scare Zhun Yingjun and ask him to leave with Ma Zhu so that he could find a place to heal himself. He didn't expect Zhun Yingjun to threaten Meng Yao with a gun instead. Bang! A muffled sound was followed by a heart-wrenching scream. It wasn't a gunshot, but the sound of bodies colliding. In the next moment, Zhun Yingjun's gun fell to the ground. He covered his crotch with both hands, his eyes popped out, and he panted heavily as he screamed in pain. "Yeah." Yushu made a V shape with her hand and clapped. "I'm so good. I kicked Zhun Yingjun into a real eunuch." Yushu used all her strength in her kick, and Zhun Yingjun was in a tragedy. He didn't expect a weak girl to attack him first. Wasn't she afraid that he would shoot? However, he was in so much pain that he couldn't ask the question. Meng Yao smiled, but she still felt that Yushu was too reckless. Shu, aren't you afraid that he will shoot me? You are so brave. How are you going to be the mistress if I die? Oh, Yao Yao sis, you finally decided to marry me? Yushu said happily. He can't kill you because he didn't turn on the safety. I observed him before I kicked him. How did you know? Meng Yao was surprised. She didn't expect Shu to be so reckless. She did it after observing him carefully. My brother brought me to the army to play with guns. Yushu picked up Zhan Ingjuan's gun on the ground. Look, Yao Yao sis, the safety is here. Don't move, the gun might go off by accident. Meng Yao said worriedly to Yushu. Throw it away. Yushu pulled the trigger just as Meng Yao finished her sentence. Oh, Yushu stuck her tongue out as she tossed the gun to the ground. It really did go off, ouch. Zhan Ingjun rolled his eyes and almost cried. He'd been hoping that Yushu's kick wouldn't cause him any serious internal injuries, and he'd just have to get Yao Wang to take a look at him. Maybe he'd be able to recover, but Yushu had shot him in the crotch. That hope had been dashed to smithereens. The gun was fired by accident, and it was quite accurate. Although Ma Zhu's body was in pain, he couldn't watch Yushu kill Zhan Ingjun. His boss told him to protect him. He couldn't run away alone. With that thought, Ma Zhu gritted his teeth and flew over. He picked up Zhan Ingjun and glared at Lin Yi with hatred before quickly descending the mountain. Ma Zhu didn't know why Lin Yi didn't kill Zhan Ingjun. It was probably the same reason why Zhan Ingjun didn't dare to kill Meng Yao and Yushu. With that thought, he was relieved. At least Lin Yi wouldn't chase after them. He didn't know that Lin Yi couldn't kill him even if he wanted to now. Just as Ma Zhu left, Lin Yi finally couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground. Huh? Where's Shield Bro? Yushu wanted to cheer for Lin Yi, but in the blink of an eye, Lin Yi disappeared. Lin Yi. Meng Yao's eyes were sharp, and she saw Lin Yi fall to the ground. She ran over subconsciously. Lin Yi, how are you? At this moment, Lin Yi's face was pale. His eyes were slightly closed, but he didn't faint. He said in a weak voice, help me to a quiet place. I need to heal. Okay. Meng Yao saw that Lin Yi wasn't dead, and she was overjoyed. She quickly reached out to help Lin Yi. But Lin Yi was simply too weak. He didn't have an ounce of strength left in his body. He tried to stand up with Meng Yao's help, but he couldn't. Meng Yao saw how weak Lin Yi was, and her heart ached. She wanted to carry him, but she hesitated. She wasn't his girlfriend. It wasn't good to hug him. If this news got out, how could she get married in the future? Meng Yao valued chastity very much. This was also the reason why she had such an intense reaction when she kissed Lin Yi. She felt that a girl should be loyal to one person. The only person who could be intimate with her was her boyfriend, her future husband. However, Lin Yi became like this because of her. He almost gave up his life to defeat Ma Zhu. Why should she care about this? At most, she wouldn't marry anyone. If no one wanted her, she could just marry Lin Yi. Besides, when she was in the hospital, he had already seen her naked. Why should she care about this? Even Meng Yao herself jumped in fright at the thought. Was this what she was thinking? Or Meng Yao was confused about her future. Looking at Yushu, Meng Yao gritted her teeth and reached out to carry Lin Yi. However, she realized that Lin Yi was too heavy. If she carried him alone, she was afraid that she would fall on Lin Yi. She could only say, Shu, come help me. What are you standing there for? Oh, I thought Yao Yao sis wanted to monopolize Shield Bro. Yushu quickly ran over to help. Meng Yao was speechless. She and Yushu carried Lin Yi to the cave and placed him on the ground carefully. Then she asked, all right, what should I do now? Use a knife to cut open the gunshot wound on my leg. Take out the bullet and let out the poisonous blood. Clean it. Before Lin Yi entered the jade space, he had to take out the poisonous bullet. Although according to Lin Yi's judgment, the poison on the bullet wasn't too strong, or he would have died a long time ago. He couldn't be careless. Who knew if there would be trouble after a long time? Shu, go get the mineral water, Meng Yao said hurriedly. But Yao Yao sis, the mineral water was poured out earlier. Look, there's still water. Yushu's face was bitter. She pointed at her masterpiece and said, is juice okay? Meng Yao was speechless. She looked at Lin Yi and asked. Chapter 894. Or it'll be a loss. Oh, I'll go get some now then. Yushu, on the other hand, was worried about Lin Yi's injuries as well. She got up to get some water from the bottle. Let General Wei Wu stay with you. It can find you and keep you safe. Lin Yi said. Okay. Yushu ran out of the cave and went to get water with General Wei Wu. What do I do now? Meng Yao had never experienced something like this before, and she didn't know what to do. Yushu was gone, and she didn't know what to do. There's a dagger on the side of my shoe. Take it out, cut open the wound on my leg, and take the bullet out. Lin Yi really didn't have any strength left. It was already a miracle that he was able to talk without fainting. Okay. Meng Yao didn't dare delay. She bent down and found a dagger on the side of Lin Yi's shoe. She looked at the wound on Lin Yi's leg and hesitated. You take off your pants? You're not helping me? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. He didn't have the strength. If it weren't for the urgency of the situation, Lin Yi wouldn't have let Meng Yao do something like this. She was a newbie, and she didn't even know how to remove a bullet. Lin Yi was worried that she wouldn't be able to do it. But Lin Yi really had no other choice. Lin Yi wouldn't be able to last until reinforcements came down mountain. He had to get the poison out of his body before he fainted. Oh, Meng Yao blushed. She knew that Lin Yi didn't have the strength to take off his pants, but it was embarrassing for her to do it for him. The miss clenched her teeth and used her trembling hands to touch Lin Yi's belt, but because of her nervousness, she couldn't open the belt buckle no matter how hard she tried. She was so anxious that her forehead was covered with sweat. She didn't want to waste time, but the more anxious she was, the more mistakes she'd make. Meng Yao almost bit her lip. There's a bayonet at the side, just open it. Lin Yi looked at Missy's flushed face and really wanted to bite her. And she's so cute. Oh, Meng Yao followed Lin Yi's instructions, a little embarrassed. She unbuckled the belt, but her movements paused. The eldest miss had never thought that one day she would have to take off her pants for a man. However, this scene did not happen on their wedding night, but in a rundown cave. Moreover, the two of them were not going to do such a beautiful thing. Meng Yao clenched her teeth and pulled down Lin Yi's pants. Lin Yi found a miss expression funny. Why was she acting like a gangster? Inside the trousers, Lin Yi was only wearing a pair of shorts. The young miss's heart was in her throat again. She didn't dare to look, but she had to, because right now, time was life. The miss was very clear about this. Can you open your legs? The miss pursed her lips, completely different from her usual self. At this moment, she was like a shy little wife looking at Lin Yi. She wanted to reject him, but at the same time, she wanted to welcome him. Lin Yi moved his legs with difficulty, and Meng Yao suddenly realized that Lin Yi was injured. How could he move? She quickly reached out to help Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi tried his best to open his legs, and Meng Yao also wanted to help Lin Yi. The two of them moved at the same time, and Meng Yao's hand touched something she shouldn't have touched. And so, Lin Yi had a very evil and disappointing reaction. And then, the Miss face turned even redder, like a cooked lobster. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. How could he have a reaction in this situation? This was too evil. Meng Yao didn't know what to do. The impact of today's events was too big. You touched me in the hospital, and today, I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. Meng Yao incoherently tried to defend herself from the embarrassment. Lin Yi looked at the miss who was using such a weak excuse to defend herself. He found it funny. So, the miss had such a cute side to her. Under her usual cold appearance, there was a cute and passionate heart. Okay, but I can't hold it anymore. After you help me take out the bullet, you can touch me however you want. Lin Yi also joked. Although Lin Yi's joke was a little inappropriate, it became an important spice in the atmosphere. Meng Yao heard Lin Yi's words and glared at Lin Yi. She laughed and raised the dagger in her hand. Do something naughty again, and I'll cut you. Meng Yao wouldn't have said something like this if this was a different time and place, but with Lin Yi's joke, Meng Yao regretted it as soon as she said it. She shut her mouth after saying it. But these few jokes made Meng Yao let go of her shyness, and she started to study Lin Yi's wound. What do I do? Meng Yao asked. Cut open the wound and take out the bullet. Lin Yi said. How do I do that? Meng Yao didn't know where to start. Whatever you like, do it however you want. Lin, he said. Does it hurt? Meng Yao couldn't bring herself to do it. Yes, but if you don't do it, I might die from the poison. Lin, he frowned. I don't know what poison Jining Jun made, but it has a suppressive effect on the human nervous system. If I don't take it out, there might be a problem. Lin, he was afraid that he would go into a coma after the poison took effect instead of entering the jade space. Fainting from exhaustion was different from fainting from being poisoned. Lin, he didn't dare to take the risk. Oh, Meng Yao heard that Lin, he would die if she didn't take out the bullet. She was so scared that she didn't care anymore. She clenched her teeth and held the dagger in her hand. She started cutting the wound on Lin Yi's leg with trembling hands. Miss, you need to use more strength, be more ruthless. You're playing with death by 1,000 cuts right now. Lin, he was speechless as he watched Meng Yao cut herself bit by bit. This is one of the 10 great tortures of the Qing dynasty. Meng Yao's face reddened as she nodded. She finally increased the strength of her grip, but it was more of a test than anything else. Luckily, Lin Yi's dagger was fast, and Lin Yi's endurance was strong. Otherwise, he would have collapsed. The wound was finally cut open by Meng Yao. She could vaguely see the bullet inside, but Meng Yao didn't know how to do it. After all, she didn't have any tools like tweezers. She couldn't just use her hands to cut it, could she? Now, I can see the bullet, but how do I take it out? Meng Yao asked hesitantly. Chapter 895. Yao Yao is so strong, Meng Yao hesitated before lowering her head and sucking on Lin Yi's wound. She couldn't think of anything else other than that. Meng Yao didn't dare make too big a cut on Lin Yi's thigh. She felt that the only way to suck the bullet out was with her mouth, as well as the poisoned blood around it. Meng Yao didn't even think about whether or not it would be inappropriate to do that. She could feel that Lin Yi's voice was getting weaker and weaker, and she couldn't care less about anything else. It didn't take long for the bullet to come out, much to Meng Yao's relief. She spat it out and started sucking the poisoned blood out of Lin Yi's wound. Yu Shu and General Wei Wu didn't dare tarry after getting some water from the stream. They rushed back to the cave, only to see a scene that left Meng Yao's mouth agape. Holy shit, Yao Yao, you're so strong. You're helping Shield Bro. Yu Shu cried out in surprise. You want to repay him with your body now? But you can't. Shield Bro's injured. He's really weak. Stop. Let him recover first. Yu Shu couldn't be blamed for her quick image. Meng Yao's back was facing the cave entrance, and her head was buried between Lin Yi's thighs. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't wearing any pants. It was hard not to misunderstand this scene. Meng Yao didn't understand Yu Shu's words at first, but the latter part made sense. She almost choked on Lin Yi's poisoned blood as she stood up and spat it out, glaring at Yu Shu. Shu, what the hell are you talking about? I'm giving Lin Yi drugs. Yu Shu blinked, realizing that she'd misunderstood when she saw that Shield Bro was still wearing his underwear. I see. Heh. Yao Yao, here's some water. I brought it. Meng Yao glared at Yu Shu, but couldn't help but shake her head with a bitter smile as she thought about how intimate their position was. Luckily, it was only Shu who'd seen it. Someone else would have walked away a long time ago if it had been anyone else. Meng Yao cleaned Lin Yi's wound and stood up. She wasn't in the mood to argue with Shu about what happened before. She asked hurriedly, "Is there any bandage I can use?" "Nope. Sanitary napkins work," Yu Shu said weakly after rummaging through her bag for a while. Meng Yao didn't know what to say. That's a bloodsucker, right? I don't think so. But Shield Bro's wound doesn't seem to be bleeding anymore, Yu Shu said, surprised. Meng Yao turned her head back and saw that the wound on Lin Yi's leg had stopped bleeding. She let out a sigh of relief. Then we'll stick a sanitary pad on it first. We'll carry him down the mountain. Lin Yi's body had been soaked in all kinds of medicine since he was young, so his self-healing ability was quite good. Stopping the bleeding was a piece of cake. Just as Meng Yao and Yu Shu were talking, Lin Yi finally fainted. He was simply too tired, and his stamina was severely depleted. The next moment, Lin Yi entered the jade space. This was the only thing that Lin Yi could rejoice about. He could still enter the jade space. Lin Yi was afraid that he'd be poisoned too deeply and wouldn't be able to connect to the jade space if he fainted. Fu. Lin Yi thanked his lucky stars. He saw Jiao Lao in the jade space and couldn't help but grin. I didn't think that I'd be able to see you again. I really didn't. I thought that you'd die for sure. Jiao Lao nodded in agreement. But I didn't think that you'd come up with such a crazy move. You're a lunatic. It's too crazy. Do you know that if you took a step back later, you'd be smashed into pieces? Do you think that you're more resistant than Ma Zhu with his golden shield? Lin Yi smiled bitterly and felt a little awkward. I didn't care that much back then, right? How could I think of the consequences? At that time, I thought that it'd be great if I could die with Ma Zhu. All right, Jiao Lao. Why didn't you remind me? What's the use of reminding you? You didn't care that much already, and you still have the time to care about my reminder? Jiao Lao shook his head. But I really didn't think that you'd come up with such a way to use energy. Energy bomb. That's really ruthless. That attack was no less than the bomb that you used to blow up Qibing's skyscraper. In school, the physics teacher always said, think of energy when you don't have any moves. Didn't I think of energy now? Lin Yi was talking about the solution to a physics problem. During this period of time, Lin Yi often attended classes in school. When solving physics problems, the physics teacher always said, think of energy when you don't have any moves. Lin Yi memorized it. He didn't think that it would become an important way to save his life. Jiao Yazi was speechless. You were lucky, but I have to say that you created a trump card. A trump card that can allow you to defeat opponents who are at a higher level than you. However, it's not very useful. Oh, Lin Yi paused for a second and then nodded. He understood what Jiao Yazi meant. Although the energy bomb was extremely powerful, it would also cause great damage to the user. It would be fine if the opponent died from the explosion, but if it didn't, and the opponent still had the strength to counterattack, then Lin Yi would be in danger. The energy bomb would drain all the energy in the body. Once it was used, it was equivalent to betting all of one's life on this move. It was extremely dangerous. Therefore, this move could only be used when there was no other choice. Just like today, although Ma Zhu was heavily injured from the explosion, he still had the strength to attack Lin Yi. If he wasn't scared silly by Lin Yi and continued to attack, then Lin Yi would probably die here today. However, Lin Yi could still stand up at that time. Although he looked pathetic, there were no signs of serious injuries. This made Ma Zhu inexplicably terrified. He was afraid that Lin Yi would use such a killer move again, and then he would really turn into ashes. Indeed, this move can't be used casually. Otherwise, it would be really dangerous. Lin Yi nodded. All right, hurry up and look at your injuries. Jiao Yazi said to Lin Yi. Lin Yi sat cross-legged and silently channeled the art of dragon mastery. His body really needed to replenish energy. The energy in the space of the jade quickly rushed into Lin Yi's body. This feeling of being filled with energy was really comfortable. Lin Yi couldn't help but let out a satisfied moan, enjoying the infusion of energy. Chapter 896. He couldn't accept this. Although the energy was quickly absorbed into Lin Yi's body, it could not stay in his body. The energy entered Lin Yi's body through the pores on this side and exited through the pores on the other side. It just shuttled through Lin Yi's body and returned to the space in the jade pendant. What's going on? Lin Yi was shocked. He quickly stopped the art of dragon mastery and checked his body. That wasn't right. Although he was heavily injured this time, his injuries weren't any lighter than this time after he was beaten by Uncle Zhu. What's wrong? Jiao Yazi sensed that something was wrong with Lin Yi and quickly asked. Jiao Lao, it seems that the energy cannot be absorbed by my body. I can't convert the energy in the space of the jade pendant into my own energy. Lin Yi's eyes widened. My body is like a sieve. Energy enters from one side and exits from the other. Oh? Jiao Yazi was taken aback and frowned. Circulate the art of dragon mastery now. Let me see. Although Lin Yi was anxious, he still nodded and activated the art of dragon mastery. The energy in the space of the jade pendant was instantly mobilized and rushed into Lin Yi's body. However, something strange happened again. After the energy entered Lin Yi's body, it turned around and slipped away from Lin Yi's body. Indeed, as Lin Yi had described, his body was like a sieve, and the energy only passed through it. Strange. This is too strange. Jiao Yazi widened his eyes and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Energy can't stay in the body. This is too strange. 10 minutes later, Lin Yi stopped practicing the art of dragon mastery dejectedly. His expression was extremely ugly. Jiao Lao, I still can't convert the energy to my own use. I can clearly feel the energy leaving my body. Jiao Yazi fell in a deep thought. Let me think carefully, Jiao Yazi said as he walked over to check on Lin Yi. How is it? Lin Yi asked anxiously after waiting for a while and not seeing Jiao Yazi speak. After a while, Jiao Yazi shook his head regretfully. I've found a problem, and according to my guess, this might be the reason why you can't absorb the energy. What's the reason? Lin Yi asked anxiously. The reason? I'll tell you. Don't be sad. I hope you can hold on. Jiao Lao sighed and said. What do you mean? Lin Yi was stunned at first, but he immediately understood what Jiao Yazi meant. Jiao Yazi meant that although he found the reason why he couldn't absorb the energy, he didn't find a solution. Lin Yi's heart sank, but he smiled bitterly. As long as there was a reason, there was no need to worry about finding a solution. So he said, Jiao Lao, tell me, I'm not that weak. I thought about dying together with you, but now I just can't absorb the energy. Then I'll tell you. Jiao Yazi's expression became serious. Your meridians were all destroyed by your own energy bomb. It can be said that you're a useless person now. A spiritual master's meridians are all destroyed, so you're no different from an ordinary person. You can't use chi anymore. Lin Yi was shocked, and he quickly checked the injuries in his body. Lin Yi was in a hurry to train in the space of the jade pendant, so he didn't check his injuries carefully because Lin Yi was sure that no matter how serious his injuries were, they could be healed in the space of the jade pendant. Just like General Wei Wu, his organs and meridians were almost destroyed by Yu Kuan, but Lin Yi could still use the energy in his body to save it. So, Lin Yi thought that as long as he could live, it would be fine, but he didn't have the time to check the abnormalities in his body. Now that Elder Jiao was telling him about it, Lin Yi realized that his meridians had been blown to pieces by his own energy bomb. That's not right. Suddenly, Lin Yi raised his head and looked at Jiao Lao. When I was fighting with Uncle Zhu, I was seriously injured too, and many of my meridians were broken. Although not all of them were broken, I can still use my energy to heal them, right? Well, you said it yourself. Although not all of them were broken, your situation now is that all of them are broken. Jiao Yazi shook his head. How can part of them be the same as breaking all of them? As long as there are meridians that are not broken, you can still use the art of dragon mastery and use these meridians that are not broken to heal other damaged meridians. But now, your meridians are all broken. How are you going to heal them? Lin Yi was speechless. What Jiao Yazi said was right. His situation was like a domino. As long as he pushed one down, it would cause a chain reaction. But if he didn't push one down, then all the other cards wouldn't fall. In other words, if one of his meridians was healed, he could slowly use the art of dragon mastery to heal the other meridians. But now that he couldn't heal one, then the other meridians couldn't be healed either. Your mistake is using that energy bomb. You used up all the energy in your body. If there was still a part left, even if only 1/3 of it was left in your body, it could still heal one of your damaged meridians. Jiao Yazi shook his head and said, But you didn't even leave a trace of energy. I can't do anything about it, ah? Lin Yi didn't know what to say. Even Jiao Yazi couldn't do anything about it. If he said that he couldn't do anything about it, then he really couldn't do anything about it. He kept his life, but he lost his strength. Was a blessing or a curse? Lin Yi wasn't willing to give up. From the peak of the early phase of the mystic class, he suddenly dropped to the point where he had no strength at all. This difference made Lin Yi extremely disappointed. Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi silently started the art of dragon mastery again. This time, he didn't stop for a few hours. Lin, he let the energy flow through his body, but he still continued to train without a care. Jiao Yazi looked at the determined Lin Yi and shook his head, but he didn't say anything to stop him. He knew very well that if it was anyone else, they wouldn't give up so easily. So he let Lin Yi experiment. In a situation like this, unless Lin Yi gave up on his own accord, he wouldn't let the matter rest. Chapter 897. Life is full of adventures, Jiao Lao. Jiao Lao. Lin Yi exclaimed in surprise. Jiao Lao, I did it. Oh. Jiao Yazi was surprised. You did it? Yes, I realized that the energy that passed through my body wasn't completely useless. There was still a small amount left, and it's slowly healing my body. Lin Yi said excitedly. Although the healing area is very small, I can still feel it. Oh, you mean that? Jiao Yazi rubbed his chin. He really couldn't bear to hurt Lin Yi's feelings. However, there were some things he had to say after some hesitation. You're right. Since you're using the art of dragon mastery, it's a process of energy absorption and conversion. Although your meridians are damaged, they're not completely useless. You can still convert a small amount of energy, but it's just a drop in the ocean. Oh? That means if I continue to train like this, it's possible to recover my strength? Lin Yi was overjoyed when he heard Jiao Yazi's words. He didn't hear Jiao Yazi's hidden meaning. Yes, it's possible. Jiao Yazi nodded. In about 100 years, you'll be able to repair 1/3 of your meridians. Huh? Lin Yi was shocked by Jiao Yazi's words. 100 years? Only 1/3 of it? Yes, if you train day and night, you'll be able to repair 1/3 of it in about 30,000 days. In 100,000 days, you'll be able to repair a whole meridian. By then, you'll be able to repair all your meridians very quickly. Jiao Yazi counted with his fingers for Lin Yi. Lin Yi was speechless, but I don't think it's that slow. Judging from the speed at which my injuries are healing, it will only take a few days for my injuries to recover. That's right. Jiao Yazi nodded his head as if it was a matter of course. Physical masters cultivate their bodies, while inner masters cultivate their meridians. You don't have the body of a physical master. Your body is just slightly stronger than a normal person's, so naturally, you can recover faster. However, as for your meridians, Lin Yi came to a sudden realization. So this was the reason. In that case, it seemed that he had been pleasantly surprised for nothing. Phew. Lin Yi gave up on trying and sat on the ground of the jade pendant space. Jiao Lao, is there really no other way? If I wasn't just a soul shadow, perhaps I could give it a try. If Master is here, he can also help you. Jiao Yazi said. What you said is unrealistic. Is there no more realistic way? Lin Yi asked with a bitter smile. Yes, the more realistic way is to go and practice physical masters. Jiao Yazi said, look, that Ma Zhu, he's also very powerful after practicing physical martial arts. If you don't have a super powerful energy bomb, you're dead for sure. Lin Yi blinked his eyes. You're asking me to practice Golden Bell Shield? This is the easiest way for you to recover your strength that I can think of. Jiao Yazi nodded his head and said. Lin Yi didn't say anything. He pondered for a while and finally nodded his head. Perhaps. You're right. This is the only way. It's good that you're open-minded. After all roads lead to Rome. Who knows? Maybe when you open the second stone door of the cave, you'll get an unexpected reward. Jiao Yazi said. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? Lin Yi's eyes brightened. His path of practicing was different from a physical practitioner's, but it wasn't the same as a spiritual practitioner's either. He practiced the art of dragon mastery, a very rare art. If he was behind the stone door on the second floor, there might be a way to repair his meridians. Life is always full of fortuitous encounters. When you get to the mountain, there will always be a way. Jiao Yazi said, when you're in despair, maybe there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. Lin Yi nodded. If that's the case, I'll have to heal my injuries first before anything else. Shoo, can't you be more steady? How are you carrying him? If you carry him like this, your shield bro will die from the shaking. Meng Yao and Yushu carried Lin Yi down the mountain. The two girls took care of Lin Yi's injuries and didn't dare to stay any longer. They were afraid that Zhun Yingjuan's men would come back again. If that happened, not only would Lin Yi be in danger, but they would also be in danger. The phone was taken away by Zhun Yingjuan's men, and Lin Yi's phone was taken out by Meng Yao from his pocket. It was blown to pieces and couldn't be used at all. Half of the flip phone was nowhere to be seen. They couldn't call for help and were worried about Lin Yi's injuries. So, they each carried Lin Yi down the mountain. Meng Yao originally wanted to carry Lin Yi, but she realized that the mountain path was too steep. She almost threw Lin Yi off, so she gave up the idea of carrying Lin Yi and asked Shu to help carry Lin Yi. So, Meng Yao held Lin Yi's feet and carried his legs in front, while Yushu held Lin Yi's armpits and carried Lin Yi's arms behind. The two of them walked down the mountain carefully, one in front and one behind. This steep mountain range, even if one person went down the mountain without carrying anything, it was still very dangerous, and it was very easy to fall, not to mention two people carrying a wounded person. Oh, okay. It was Yushu's first time carrying someone, and she could only try to find a way. How about you be familiar with it? As she spoke, she tightened her grip and made Lin Yi's head press against her abdomen to prevent Lin Yi from shaking. Do you want to suffocate him to death? Your chest is so big, it's going to suffocate his head. Meng Yao looked at Yushu speechlessly and glared at her. Then what should we do? It's already so big, we can't cut it off, it's going to hurt. Yushu wanted to remove Lin Yi's head from under her chest, but she was afraid that it would hurt Lin Yi. She said helplessly, Yao sis, why don't you take the back? Your chest is small, it won't suffocate him to death. Meng Yao almost exploded from Yushu's words. What do you mean my chest is small? Mine is just the right size, okay? Who's a big cow like you? Meng Yao humphed and retorted. You continue to carry him. You're too short. It's not suitable for you to walk in front. Yushu wasn't angry. She knew that she wasn't as tall as Meng Yao. She smiled and said, okay. Chapter 898. Chapter 0897. A difficult journey. Yao, are you all right? Yushu might have been messing around with Meng Yao, but she was really worried about Meng Yao. She was shocked when she saw Meng Yao fall down. SSSSSS. Meng Yao was in so much pain that she was about to cry. She had never been hurt like this before. The weather was hot, and she wasn't wearing much clothing. Kneeling on the hard stone road made her knees purple, but Meng Yao couldn't care less. She gritted her teeth and stood up slowly, but her hands were still holding on to Lin Yi's legs, afraid that she would fall. Meng Yao shook her head with a crying face. I'm fine, let's go. Oh. Yushu nodded. She knew that Yao must be in a lot of pain, but she didn't know what to say. Should she ask Yao to put Lin Yi down and rest for a while? That wouldn't do. The two stumbled down the mountain. Meng Yao didn't know how many times she'd fallen on her knees, and Yushu didn't know how many times she'd fallen on her buttocks. Their arms were cut by branches and rocks, but they didn't seem to notice it at all. The two let out a sigh of relief when they reached the foot of the mountain, smiling at each other as if they'd completed a big mission. They were both worried about the same man, but they weren't jealous of each other. It was as if their hearts were closer than ever. Luckily, Lin Yi didn't remove the car keys before he went up the mountain. Lin Yi had a backup plan so that it would be easier for him to escape. No one would be able to steal his car at the foot of the mountain. It was convenient for Meng Yao and Yushu now. Otherwise, Lin Yi's car keys would have been blown to pieces. Meng Yao and Yushu carefully placed Lin Yi on the back seat of the Beetle, and the two hurried back home. They didn't go to the hospital, but went home directly. They knew that Lin Yi never went to the hospital when he was injured. He could recover on his own. This time, before Lin Yi fainted, he did not ask them to send him to the hospital. Peng Zhan paced around the villa anxiously. He called Lin Yi, but his phone was turned off. He called his daughter and Shu, but their phones were still turned off. He couldn't contact the kidnappers, so he didn't know how Lin Yi, his daughter, and Shu were doing. Did Lin Yi pick up his daughter and Shu? Did the kidnappers keep their promise and let them go? Why did Lin Yi also turn off his phone? Faubert was injured, and Peng Zhan didn't even have anyone to talk to. He couldn't call the police either, so he could only wait anxiously for Lin Yi's return. DD. Suddenly, The sound of a car came from outside the villa. Pengzhan jumped and quickly ran out of the villa, only to see that Yushu's yellow beetle was back. Pengzhan shouted subconsciously, but after shouting, he realized that the person in the driver's seat wasn't Lin Yi, but his daughter, Meng Yao. Daddy. Meng Yao gritted her teeth the whole way. Her knees were hurting, and she couldn't even step on the gas pedal, but she still persisted. She had to persist. Lin Yi was down, and she had to bear the responsibility of an elder sister. Shu, on the other hand, was even worse than her. Meng Yao fell on her knees, and Yushu fell on her butt. She didn't even dare to sit down, lying on her side the whole way, and it was very uncomfortable. However, seeing Pengzhan, Meng Yao couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears flowed out of her eyes. There were grievances, pain, and most of all, she was worried for Lin Yi. Fortunately, they reached home safely, and Lin Yi didn't die. Meng Yao got off the car, and she couldn't even stand straight. She didn't know how she managed to persevere the whole way without any accidents. She jumped into Pengzhan's arms. Daddy, I'm so scared. All right, it's good that you're back. Pengzhan was happy to see his daughter, but he didn't see Lin Yi. He was curious. Yao, where's Lin Yi? He's in the back of the car. He's hurt. He got hurt trying to save me and Shu. Meng Yao cried, very sad. Daddy, Lin Yi almost died just now. He almost lost his life to save us. Pengzhan was shocked. Then why are you guys still going home? Aren't you going to send him to the hospital? Shield Bro always recovers on his own. He never asked us to send him to the hospital. Yushu explained, covering her, but as she got off the car. Is that so? Pengzhan remembered that when Falbert was injured, the doctors in the hospital couldn't do anything about it, right? It seemed like Lin, he had his own ways, and Pengzhan didn't say anything more. He opened the car door and carried Lin into the villa. Lin, he was placed on his bed in his own room, and Meng Yao and Yushu had already changed into pajamas. One of them had a bruised butt, and the other had a purple knee. One of them didn't dare to stand, and the other didn't dare to sit, but both of them stayed by Lin Yi's bed. Pengzhan sighed. These two kids had never suffered much since they were young, but now, with just a little bit of safflower oil, they gritted their teeth and stayed by Lin Yi's side, without rest. This made Pengzhan very happy. They had finally grown up without him noticing. She was no longer the carefree little girl she used to be. Do we really not need to send Lin Yi to the hospital? Although Pengzhan saw that Lin Yi's complexion had obviously improved, he was still a little worried. There's no need. The hospital can't do anything about his injury. Meng Yao shook her head. She believed that Lin Yi must have a way to treat his injury, even if Lin Yi seemed to be asleep at the moment. Pengzhan nodded. I'll go to the company's police station to deal with the aftermath. You guys stay at home with Lin Yi, don't go out. The villa area had 24-hour surveillance, so the kidnappers wouldn't be able to attack openly. Besides, they didn't know how Lin Yi's injury was, and he couldn't even protect himself right now, so they didn't have to worry about Meng Yao and Yushu's safety. As for Falbert's injury, they could only wait for Lin Yi to wake up before going to save Falbert. Otherwise, there was no other way. After Pengzhan left, Meng Yao hesitated and said to Yushu, Shu, should we tell Tang Yun about Lin Yi's injury? Tell her what? Let her cause trouble? If she knew that Shield Bro got injured because of us, she would definitely be furious. Yushu shook her head. Chapter 899. Who is right and who is wrong? Then, I understand. Yao sis, you decide. Yushu didn't know what to do. Although she didn't want Tang Yun to come, Meng Yao was right. They had to let Tang Yun know sooner or later. Shu, Tang Yun isn't a bad person. When we were in danger, Tang Yun would ask Lin Yi to help. How can we not tell her when something happened to Lin Yi? Meng Yao seemed to be explaining it to Shu, but at the same time, it seemed like she was explaining it to herself. Speaking of which, Lin Yi's just a shield dad hired for me. He's not my bodyguard. Why would he risk his life for 30,000 yuan? Yeah, Yushu nodded. Maybe Shield Bro likes you. Huh? Meng Yao paused, blushing at Yushu's words. How is that possible? Don't talk nonsense. If he liked me, why would he bother with Tang Yun? Tang Yun is braver than you. Yushu, on the other hand, saw through everything. Shield bro would have been yours if you'd confessed earlier, Yao Yao. Ming Yao's heart tightened. Was that really the case? She shook her head. Let's not talk about this, I'll call Tang Yun. At school, Tang Yun was restless the entire morning. She had been worried about Lin Yi ever since she left Lin Yi, but she didn't dare call him. She didn't want to disturb him, so she didn't even listen to what the teacher was saying in class. She kept thinking about Lin Yi. It was finally noon, but there was still no news from Lin Yi. She couldn't help but give Lin Yi a call, but the phone was turned off. Tang Yun's heart tightened as a bad feeling rose in her heart. Lin Yi, why did you turn off your phone? Meng Yao and Yushu had turned off their phones earlier, and now Lin Yi had turned off his too. Did something happen to him too? Thinking of this, Tang Yun quickly called Meng Yao and Yushu, but their phones were still turned off. Tang Yun panicked. She wanted to know about Lin Yi's situation, but at this moment, she didn't know who to ask. She was so anxious that she didn't even want to eat lunch. She sat alone in the classroom in a daze, somewhat at a loss. Tang Yun's phone rang all of a sudden, startling her. She quickly picked it up and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. Hello, Tang Yun? I'm Meng Yao. Miss didn't have her phone anymore, so she could only use her home phone to call Tang Yun. She had a natural hostility towards Tang Yun, so she remembered Tang Yun's phone number very clearly. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to contact Tang Yun. Meng Yao, are you all right? Tang Yun was relieved. If Meng Yao was fine, then Lin Yi should be fine as well. However, Tang Yun's heart tightened again. If Lin Yi was fine, then why didn't Lin Yi call her but Meng Yao? This didn't make sense. Tang Yun subconsciously asked, Where's Lin Yi? Is he with you? Lin Yi. Meng Yao had already decided to tell Tang Yun, but she didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to say it. How to face Tang Yun. What happened to Lin Yi? Tang Yun saw Meng Yao's hesitation, and she had a bad feeling. What happened to him? He's injured. Meng Yao gritted her teeth and said, I'm sorry, injured? Is it serious? Tang Yun asked anxiously. He's unconscious, but shouldn't be a big deal. After all, he's been injured a few times, but he's always been fine. Meng Yao said carefully. This time, she was a little weak in front of Tang Yun, but she couldn't help it. Lin Yi was injured because of her. Should? Tang Yun was a little annoyed. What did she mean by should? How could she be so careless? She quickly asked, what did the doctor say? Where are you guys now? I'll go right now. We didn't go to the hospital. We're at home. Meng Yao said, why didn't you go to the hospital? You guys, seriously. Tang Yun was a little angry. He's injured, and you guys didn't send him to the hospital. Are you trying to kill him? Tang Yun, listen to me first. Meng Yao naturally understood Tang Yun's feelings. It's true that Lin Yi got injured, but he recovered by himself several times. This time, he only asked us to bring him to a quiet place to heal. He didn't ask us to send him to the hospital, I see. Tang Yun suddenly remembered that Lin Yi went to find trouble with Zhao Qibing for her. After tearing down his building, he was injured by Zhao Qibing's men. He didn't go to the hospital, but went to Fatty Lai's house to heal. After that, Lin Yi recovered by himself without any doctor's help. Thinking of this, Tang Yun suddenly felt embarrassed for her rashness. I was too anxious. I'm sorry, I'll go right now. Tang Yun's apology made Meng Yao a little embarrassed. After all, Lin Yi got injured because of her, and Tang Yun still said this. She felt even more sorry. You don't need to apologize to me. You're worried about Lin Yi. It's not wrong. After all, it's because of me that Lin Yi got injured. I should be the one apologizing to you. All right, let's not talk about who's right and who's wrong. I'll go right now. Tang Yun didn't want to dwell on this issue. It was meaningless. She was worried about Lin Yi more than she was complaining about Meng Yao. Although Tang Yun still held a grudge against Lin Yi for getting injured because of Meng Yao and Yushu, it was Lin Yi's choice no matter what. Lin Yi went to save them. It was Lin Yi's decision. As Lin Yi's girlfriend, she should support Lin Yi unconditionally and not blame Meng Yao and Yushu. Come to my house directly. Villa area 033. Meng Yao said, the security here knows. Okay. Tang Yun remembered Meng Yao's house number and hung up. She stumbled out of the classroom and almost bumped into someone. Luckily, Tang Yun reacted fast enough and stopped in time. Mr. Wang. Tang Yun jumped. She didn't expect it to be Wang Jifeng. Chapter 900. Taking advantage of him? I understand, Master Wang. Tang Yun wasn't in the mood to talk to him anymore. She was worried about Lin Yi's safety. She forced a smile and left quickly. Wang Jifeng shook his head. Why was Tang Yun's attitude so cold now? Could it be that Lin Yi said something to her, and she knew about his situation? That's why she was so cold to him? Wang Jifeng couldn't help but worry at the thought. According to Tang Yun's personality, although her life was much better than before, she wouldn't be so extravagant as to take a taxi. But this time, she stopped the taxi and went straight to the villa area. So beautiful. This was Tang Yun's first thought when she arrived at the villa area. Every villa was spacious and bright. They were even more beautiful than Fatty Lai's villa. Tang Yun already thought that her new house was beautiful, but when she arrived here, she finally knew what luxury was. So Mingyao's family was this rich. Tang Yun sighed. If she really had to compete with the miss, what could she use to compete? But this thought only flashed through her mind. Tang Yun's heart was on Lenny now. She paid the taxi fee and came to the villa 80033. She pressed the doorbell. Yao Yao sis, someone is pressing the doorbell, Yushu said. Oh. Meng Yao looked at Lin Yi blankly. She didn't know what was going on in her mind. She only responded subconsciously after hearing Yushu's words. Yao Yao sis? Yushu called again. Oh. Meng Yao responded again, but there was no other reaction. Yushu had no choice but to open the door first. Meng Yao didn't hear what Yushu was saying at all, her thoughts drifting back to the first time she met Lin Yi. He was wearing a tattered shirt and a pair of tattered pants, and Meng Yao wasn't good at communicating with strangers in the first place. It was only natural that she would reject a stranger like Lin Yi from the bottom of her heart. Lin Yi. However, after Lin Yi took a shower and changed his clothes, Meng Yao had to admit that Lin Yi was quite energetic. At least a guy with this kind of appearance should be very popular with girls. But Meng Yao didn't like him very much. How could she get used to a stranger suddenly appearing in the villa? After the big fight with her dad, Meng Yao had to accept the reality of Lin Yi's existence. But because of her instinctive rejection and vigilance toward strangers, the miss didn't give him a good look. Afraid that Lin Yi would do something bad to her, Meng Yao called her best friend Shu over and asked her to stay with her in the villa. With Lin Yi's addition, the conflict increased. Meng Yao almost went crazy after drinking the soda with Lin Yi's saliva on it. Did she kiss this bastard indirectly? Meng Yao was disgusted. She really wanted to kick this bastard out of the villa, but now she felt heartache for him, shed tears for him, and gave up her shyness and modesty for him. Why? When did it start to change? Was it the first time he saved her? Or did she accept him naturally after living with him for a long time? Meng Yao didn't know. She really didn't know. She didn't know why, but she didn't hate him anymore. On the contrary, she started to rely on him. She treated him as a member of the villa, as her family. With him around, she felt at ease because she was afraid of losing Lin. The miss was jealous of another pretty girl for the first time. She said something that even she was embarrassed about. Today, when Lin Yi told them to learn to take care of themselves, Meng Yao's heart felt like it was being torn apart. It was a heart-wrenching pain, like losing a family member. It was just like the time when General Wei Wu was injured by Yu Kuan, or even worse, she didn't know what position Lin Yi was in her heart. Was he a family member? A relative? A friend? Or was he just a follower? Or, she didn't know? She really didn't know. She only knew that if she lost Lin Yi, she would be very sad. I'm sorry. I always bring trouble to you. The miss caressed Lin Yi's face and murmured. Yushu ran to the door and saw that it was Tang Yun. She opened the door, but she didn't know what to say. How's Lin Yi? Tang Yun asked anxiously. He's still the same. Yushu let Tang Yun in and said, You can see for yourself later. I think Shield Bro should be fine. He's very powerful. Tang Yun frowned. What use do you think it is? You're not a prophet. Over there, that's Shield Bro's room. Yushu pointed at Lin Yi's room after bringing Tang Yun into the villa. Tang Yun looked around the first floor of the villa and asked casually, Where do you guys live? Upstairs, Yushu said subconsciously. Oh, haha. Tang Yun let out a sigh of relief. Oh no, the room downstairs is the guest room. Shield Bro is staying upstairs with Yao Yao sis. Yushu realized that she slipped up and quickly corrected herself. Oh, it's pretty good, Tang Yun nodded. Pretty good. Yushu froze and widened her eyes. She immediately understood that Tang Yun didn't believe her at all. Yushu shrugged. Why was her mouth moving so fast? It wasn't easy for her to lie to Tang Yun, saying that Yao Yao sis and Shield Bro were taking a shower. Now her lie was exposed. Tang Yun entered Lin Yi's room, and the first thing she saw was Meng Yao, who was sitting on the edge of the bed. She didn't seem to notice that someone was here, and her right hand was placed on Lin Yi's cheek. This made Tang Yun frown subconsciously, and she felt uncomfortable. Tang Yun had already calmed down. She didn't come here to fight with the big and small families. She just wanted to watch over Lin Yi and see if he was okay. But Meng Yao couldn't be so shameless. Even if Lin Yi fainted, she couldn't take advantage of him. Could she? Ahem. Tang Yun coughed twice. Men and women shouldn't touch each other, miss. Please behave yourself. Meng Yao didn't realize that Tang Yun was here. She was startled by the sudden voice. Her face blushed, and the hand on Lin Yi's cheek trembled. She quickly moved it away like a mistress who was caught cheating. I saw that Lin Yi's face was a little dirty, so I wiped it for him. Don't misunderstand. Chapter 901. Jinx. Tang Yun, naturally, didn't believe Meng Yao's words. She looked at Meng Yao suspiciously, trying to figure out what was going on. Oh, Yao Yao sis, why do you say that? What do you mean by that? You and Shield Bro are closer than her. Yushu wasn't happy. Shu, don't talk nonsense. Meng Yao glared at Yushu. She didn't want her to continue. But Yushu insisted. I'll say it. What's wrong with that? Shield Bro saw you naked and touched your whole body. He wouldn't have kissed you if there was no such thing as giving or receiving. You are much closer than her. Tang Yun's face changed, but she knew that Yushu always liked to talk nonsense. She didn't believe her completely. What you said is probably false. Don't say it's false if you don't believe me. Yushu humphed. Yao Yao sis took off all her clothes for Shield Bro when she was poisoned. Shield Bro saw every part of Yao Yao sis' body, and she even peed on his face. Wah! Tang Yun and Meng Yao gasped at the same time. Meng Yao was furious after hearing Yushu's words. She ignored the pain in her leg and jumped up from the bed. Shu, I'll tear your mouth off and let you talk. Oh, don't. I'm just telling the truth. Hey, be honest. Yushu screamed as well. Tang Yun looked at the two clowns and didn't know what to say. If Lin Yi had seen or touched Meng Yao's body when he was treating Meng Yao, then it was understandable because Lin Yi was playing the role of a doctor. A doctor's heart didn't discriminate between genders. But thinking about the relationship between Meng Yao and Lin Yi, Tang Yun was conflicted. If Lin Yi had seen a girl he didn't know and looked at her body, then Tang Yun wouldn't feel anything special. But Meng Yao was different. Plus, what did Yushu say that Meng Yao had peed on Lin Yi's face? What was going on? Wasn't this Meng Yao too evil? Lin Yi treated her, but she still treated Lin Yi like this? Tang Yun, don't listen to Shu's nonsense. What she said is true, but Lin Yi and I are just a patient and doctor. Meng Yao tried to explain subconsciously. This time, Lin Yi's injury changed Meng Yao's attitude. She didn't want to fight with Tang Yun anymore. Besides, Lin Yi was injured because of her. What was the point of fighting? Oh, Tang Yi nodded. She didn't want to argue with Meng Yao, but she was a little annoyed. She looked down at Lin Yi. How'd he get hurt? He did it to save me and Shu. Meng Yao didn't want to hide anything, as she told Tang Yun everything that happened. So that's how it is. Tang Yun's heart ached. Lin Yi was willing to give up his life for Meng Yao and Yushu. How could this be? If Lin Yi died, what would happen to her? Didn't he think about the consequences? Why did he treat Meng Yao and Yushu so well? Tang Yun was jealous. Although Meng Yao and Yushu would be in danger if he didn't save them. Lin Yi couldn't just throw his life away like that. Haven't we already averted the danger? Don't be so sad. Shield Bro's complexion is getting better. You should be fine now. Yushu saw that Meng Yao and Tang Yun's faces were filled with sadness, so she said, "Last time, Shield Bro got hurt because of you. This time it's because of Yao Yao sis. So you guys are even now. Don't blame each other anymore. Man, I wonder when Shield Bro will get hurt because of me." "Shu, you jinx. What are you talking about?" Meng Yao heard Yushu's words and couldn't help but get angry. "Didn't he have you this time? You want Lin Yi to get hurt." Tang Yin also looked at Yushu angrily. However, since Meng Yao had already scolded her, Tang Yin couldn't say anything. Although Lin was in the jade space, he still knew what was happening outside. However, his body was too weak and he couldn't wake up. Meng Yao and Yushu worked hard to carry him down the mountain. Lin Yi was very touched. The mist was willing to kneel on the ground for him. It made Lin Yi very touched. Lin Yi risked his life to save them. The mist was cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. Only at this moment could she show her true nature. Lin Yi, on the other hand, knew what happened after Tang Yun's arrival. He was a little embarrassed as he listened to the three women's insinuations. However, Lin Yi wanted to wake up and tell them not to worry about him. But Lin Yi's body was too heavily injured. His body couldn't absorb the energy in the jade space. He could only rely on the art of dragon mastery to slowly recover his injuries. Time passed. 1 hour, one afternoon, all the way until night. Lin Yi still didn't show any signs of waking up. Tang Yin was getting anxious. Meng Yao and Yushu were getting anxious as well. The three of them put aside their previous grudges. At this moment, they only had one goal, and that was to find a way to wake up Lin Yi as soon as possible. Why hasn't Lin Yi woken up yet? Tang Yin was worried. She felt that time was passing like a year. "I don't know. Last time, he woke up the whole night, right?" Meng Yao hesitated and said, "Should we wait in the living room? Will we disturb him if we stay here?" Tang Yin thought about it and nodded. It was true. Would they disturb Lin Yi when he was recovering? The three of them carefully left Lin Yi's room and closed the door. They went to the living room. "Do you want something to drink?" Meng Yao was the owner of the villa. Although her relationship with Tang Yin was a little awkward, this wasn't the time to be petty. Anything, Tang Yin wasn't in the mood for drinks. Meng Yao went to the fridge and took out a couple of bottles of drinks, putting them on the coffee table in the living room. She picked one up randomly and took a sip. She hadn't had a drop of water since morning, but she'd cried a couple of times. Her body was almost dehydrated. Yushu was the same. She didn't eat or drink anything. She picked up a bottle to replenish herself. Chapter 902. Chapter 001. Lin Yi's favorite girl. Would Lin Yi worry if she and Shu got sick? Tang Yi nodded and took a sip. The three of them just stared at each other in the living room, not knowing what to say. It was a little awkward. After a while, Yushu felt bored and wanted to find something to talk about. It wasn't that she wasn't worried about Lin Yi, but that Yushu was loyal to Shield Bro the most. She was sure that Shield Bro would be fine. She had faith in Lin Yi. "Oh, let's discuss what kind of girl Shield Bro likes." Yushu looked at Meng Yao and Tang Yin and said, "Shu, what's there to discuss?" Meng Yao frowned. Tang Yin was sitting here, and she was Lin Yi's girlfriend. What kind of girl did Lin Yi like? "Let's discuss. We don't have anything to do right now, right?" Yushu blinked. "I'll speak first. I think Shield Bro likes pretty, gentle girls with good family backgrounds. What do you guys think?" "How would I know?" Meng Yao said helplessly as Yushu looked at her. "Tang Yin, what do you think?" Yushu then looked at Tang Yin. She was actually saying this to Tang Yin. After comparing with Tang Yin, Yushu realized that Yao Yao's family background was the only advantage she had, so she decided to use this to attack her opponent. Even though Yushu knew that Shield Bro didn't care about that. "I'm not participating. You guys discuss it yourselves." Tang Yun's face darkened when Yushu pointed out her weakness. "Oh, Shield Bro definitely doesn't like quiet and unsociable girls like Tang Yin." Yushu mumbled to herself. "Impossible." Tang Yin panicked upon hearing Yushu's words. She glared at Yushu. "Bullshit. Lin Yi likes people like me. Why else would he ask me to be his girlfriend?" "That's because he didn't have any other choice. There's no other school beauty in our school who likes Shield Bro other than you. That's why he chose you as his girlfriend." Yushu explained. "Aren't you two the prettiest girls in school? Why didn't Lin Yi choose you?" Tang Yin was a little angry after hearing Yushu's words. "I did. Yao Yao is the main wife, and I'm the small wife. Yushu puffed up her chest confidently. Don't think that your boobs are the truth. Keep making things up. Tang Yun humphed. What? Are you jealous that my breasts are bigger than yours? Yushu said. What am I envious of? I'm not envious at all. It's so big. It's such a burden. I'll die of exhaustion if I walk too much. Tang Yun pouted. All right, Shu, stop fooling around. Mingyao didn't want to become enemies with Tang Yun, but she knew that Shu was doing it for her own good, so she couldn't reprimand Shu. She could only tell Shu to stop and said to Tang Yun, Shu is just like that. Don't take it to heart. Oh, it's okay, I know. Tang Yun was a little surprised after hearing Mingyao's explanation, but she didn't want to argue with Yushu at this time. In the blink of an eye, it was already midnight. Peng Zhan came back with 150 million transferred from the company. Although the company was one of the top 500 companies in the country, it was still a bit of a loss. Fortunately, there was still 50 million left. If it was properly arranged, it would be able to tide through the crisis for a while. However, some expansion plans had to be paused. Of course, this was all thanks to the 100 million lin he borrowed from Lu Qianni. If it wasn't for this 100 million, Peng Zhan Industries would be in dire straits. How's Lin? Peng Zhan saw that there was light in the villa, so he opened the door with the key. But when he saw Tang Yun on the sofa, he paused for a second. This was the first time he saw Tang Yun. This is Tang Yun saw Peng Zhan, the legendary chairman of Peng Zhan Industries, the director of the school. She had only seen Peng Zhan's speech when she first entered the school. At that time, Tang Yun was just one of the tens of thousands of students in the audience. But now, seeing Peng Zhan at such a close distance, Tang Yun couldn't help but feel nervous. However, Tang Yun had met some big shots before, Fatty Lai, Guan Xiumin, and even Lu Tianyi. So even though she was nervous, she didn't feel awkward at all. She stood up politely and introduced herself. Hello, Uncle Chu. I'm Tang Yun, Lin Yi's girlfriend. I'm also a student of Songshan's Songshan School. I've seen you at the opening ceremony before. Oh, you Tang Yun? Nice to meet you. Peng Zhan had heard Faubert talk about Tang Yun before, but he had never seen her before. Now that he saw Tang Yun, his eyes lit up. What a pretty girl. She wasn't any worse than his own daughter. No wonder Lin Yi liked her. Lin Yi is still unconscious. We didn't want to disturb him, so we waited in the living room. Mingyao said, I see. Peng Zhan sighed. What about Li Fu? How is he? Is he okay? Faubert's condition is the same as before. I don't dare to act recklessly if Lin Yi doesn't wake up. Mingyao shook her head. Lin Yi and Faubert were unconscious. Two of the people closest to her in her life were unconscious. Mingyao's mood was very low. Looks like we can only wait for Lin Yi to wake up. Peng Zhan said, You guys didn't eat tonight? Are you hungry? Peng Zhan remembered that Faubert was usually the one who sent food to his daughter. Even if Faubert didn't come, Lin Yi would cook. But now, both Lin Yi and Faubert were bedridden. His daughter probably hadn't eaten? No, I don't want to eat. Mingyao shook her head and looked at Tang Yun and Yushu. What about you guys? Tang Yun and Yushu weren't in the mood to eat. Besides, they drank some nutrition drinks earlier. Girls had small appetites, so they could just treat it as a diet. Have some instant noodles. Lin Yi is a doctor. He didn't ask you guys to send him to the hospital because he has his ways. Peng Zhan comforted, I haven't eaten anything yet, so I'm a little hungry too. Okay, I'll go prepare. The miss got up and prepared instant noodles after hearing her father's words. She didn't really want to eat, but since her father wanted to eat, then everyone should eat. Chapter 903. Finally awake, Peng Zhan was eating noodles with his daughter, but saw that his daughter, Yushu, and Tang Yun were all listless. He stood up and said his goodbyes. I'll head back then, you guys rest early too? Okay. Mingyao nodded in response to Peng Zhan's suggestion. Peng Zhan shook his head and left the villa. Time passed by, and in the blink of an eye, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning, but none of the three girls felt sleepy. Mingyao, Yushu, why don't you guys rest first? I'll wait for Lin Yi here. You guys don't have to stay with me. Tang Yun said as she watched Yushu yawning and widening her eyes. She felt bad for Yushu. She just needed to stick a stick in her eyes. We're not staying with you. We're just waiting for Lin Yi to wake up. After all, he got hurt because of us. Meng Yao said with a bitter smile. Yeah. We care more about Shield Bro than you do. Yushu nodded as well. I'm afraid that the three of us won't be able to do it if we keep going like this. Tang Yun explained helplessly. 1 day is fine, 2 days is fine, but we'll have to sleep for 3 days, right? What if Lenny wakes up and we can't find him? What would we do? If that's the case, you're right. Meng Yao nodded. If that's the case, then let's go with the rotation strategy. 1 sleeps, 2 at the same time, what do you think? I think so too. Tang Yun agreed. Yushu, you seem to be the most sleepy. Why don't you go rest first? I don't want to, you go first. I'm not sleepy. Yawn. Yushu yawned again. Yushu's body wasn't that strong, which was why she didn't last as long as Meng Yao when Pin Liang locked her up in the cave. Shu, go to sleep. Listen to me. Meng Yao ordered. Oh, all right then. Yushu was indeed sleepy, and since they'd come to an agreement, there was no need for her to force herself to continue. She was resting now, so that she could have more energy to wait for Shield Bro. Yushu yawned as she walked up the stairs. Wei Wu seemed to have sensed the tension in the living room as well. He raised his head to look at Yushu before lying there unmoving. Over the past 3 days, no one knew how many times the 3 girls had rotated, and no one deliberately counted. Anyway, when one of them woke up, the other would go to sleep, and the cycle repeated. God knows how many boxes of instant noodles they had eaten, and the sky would turn dark again. There was finally some movement in Lin Yi's room. Tang Yun and Yushu were on duty at the moment, and they stood up hurriedly when they heard the commotion rushing towards Lin Yi's room. However, neither of them dared to make any loud noises, and when they reached Lin Yi's room, they opened the door quietly despite their anxiety, and carefully looked towards the direction of Lin Yi's bed. Lin Yi's eyelashes moved, and his eyelids were very heavy, but he finally struggled to open his eyes. Phew! Lin, he let out a long sigh of relief. He finally woke up. This was the most difficult time ever since he got injured. Before this, he could recover most of his strength in 1 night, and even improve a little. But this time, it took him 3 days and 3 nights just to recover from his injuries, and his strength didn't recover at all. After activating the art of Dragon Mastery, Lin Yi realized bitterly that the meridians in his body were still in a damaged state, and there wasn't a single bit of energy in his body that could be used. In other words, he was no different from a normal person now. Although he had already gotten over it in the Jade, Lin Yi was still a little disappointed when he returned to the real world. From a master to a normal person, it was just a matter of an instant. However, Lin Yi didn't regret it at all. In that situation, Lin Yi had no other choice. If he didn't use the energy bomb, he wouldn't have a chance of winning. This was because Ma Zhu was an anomaly among the physical masters. He practiced the Golden Bell Shield, and Lin Yi was 2 levels lower than him. A spiritual master at the peak of the early phase of Mystic Division could still fight against a physical master at the middle phase of Mystic Division, but it would be hard for him to fight against a physical master at the peak of the middle phase of Mystic Division, not to mention a monster like Ma Zhu. In a situation where there was no chance of winning, Lin Yi could only use all his strength and fight back. If he did as Elder Jiao said and used 1/3 of his energy to repair his meridians, he wouldn't be able to damage Ma Zhu as much as he did now with the remaining 2/3 of his energy to create an energy bomb. Lin Yi wasn't sure if it would still be able to do that. 100% energy bomb wouldn't be able to kill Ma Zhu. It only blew off one of his arms. What could a 2/3 energy bomb do to him? If the attack didn't work, Lin Yi would have wasted 2/3 of the energy, and the remaining 1/3 would be useless. So, if the situation could be repeated, Lin Yi would still choose to do the same. He was a qualified follower, right? Although Pingzhan had hired him to accompany the miss in her studies, he wasn't a full-time bodyguard. But Lin Yi was a stubborn man. He didn't care about money. He cared about friendship. If he didn't have feelings for Miss and Shu, would Lin Yi risk his life for 30,000 yuan? That was impossible. Lin Yi, you are awake? Tang Yun ran over in surprise. Yushu didn't want to be outdone. She also ran over to ask for praise. I knew that Shield Bro would be fine. Is the best. Heh. Although he was unconscious before, he knew what happened outside, but he couldn't force himself to wake up because his body was too weak. He only woke up after his injuries were completely healed. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for accompanying me for 3 days and 3 nights. Tang Yun and Yushu were stunned after hearing Lin Yi's words. How did Lin Yi know that they had been with him for 3 days and 3 nights? Although I was unconscious on the surface, I was awake the whole time. Lin Yi said, this time you guys can have a good rest, right? We are not tired. Tang Yun shook her head. Yeah, Shield Bro, you're hungry, right? What do you want to eat? I will make it for you. Yushu said. Chapter 904. Back to shelter, I see. All right, we'll go rest then. Tang Yun nodded after hearing Lin Yi's words. Meng Yao woke up in a hurry and went to take over Tang Yun and Yushu's shift. She didn't sleep for long, actually, only a couple of hours. She was worried about Lin Yi's safety, so how could she sleep well? She stumbled down the stairs, but didn't see Yushu and Tang Yun on the sofa. She was startled, but she vaguely heard some voices in Lin Yi's room. Could it be? Meng Yao's sleepiness disappeared instantly as she rushed to Lin Yi's room. She saw Lin Yi smiling as he laid on the bed, talking to Tang Yun and Shu. Meng Yao's heart relaxed instantly. She was so happy that Lin Yi was finally awake. Yao Yao, you should sleep too. I can tell that you didn't sleep well just by looking at your messy hair. It was Lin Yi's first time seeing such a messy miss. Her hair was messy, and she didn't have any image at all. Meng Yao blushed at Lin Yi's words. She remembered that she just woke up, and her hair was messy. Yushu and Tang Yun had been awake for a long time, and they'd already washed their faces and combed their hair. She was the only one who rushed over. Meng Yao's face showed a hint of shyness, a little different from her usual cold image. But the shyness disappeared in a flash, and she returned to her usual calm self. Tang Yun was here, and she had to control her emotions. It's good that you're awake. Do you still need a rest? Yeah, I need a rest for a while. You guys go rest too, Lin Yi said. The 3 girls all had their own thoughts. Meng Yao wanted to say thank you words. Yushu wanted to ask what Shield Bro's killer move was, and Tang Yun wanted to ask if there was anything Lin Yi needed her to do. She wanted to stay by Lin Yi's side and take care of him. However, the 3 of them could not say anything and could only leave the room together. Phew. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't that he didn't want to see the 3 women, nor did he really want to rest. On the one hand, he wanted the 3 women to rest, but the most important thing was that Lin Yi hadn't thought about what to say to them. Regarding the present and the future, Lin Yi did not know where to go. Lin Yi, who had lost his strength, could be found by enemies at any time. He could lose his life at any time, and he could also bring trouble and danger to the eldest miss without strength. It would be difficult for him to move an inch. Fortunately, his enemies did not know of his current situation. Otherwise, they would have come knocking on his door. Thinking of this, Lin Yi could not help but smile bitterly. He wanted to take out his phone to call the old man at home and ask him if there was any way. But when his hand reached into his pocket, he was shocked to find that his phone had been destroyed by his own energy bomb. Tang Yun, Meng Yao, and Yushu were really tired. Everyone was thinking about Lin Yi, and they didn't sleep well for the past 3 days and 3 nights. So when they came out of Lin Yi's room and felt relieved, they immediately felt sleepy. Tang Yun was also resting in the bedroom, above Meng Yao and Yushu. The Mist didn't mind Tang Yun and let her sleep on her in Yushu's bed. The Mist didn't know why she suddenly didn't reject Tang Yun so much. She accepted Lin Yi. Did that mean that she also accepted his woman? In short, Meng Yao didn't hate Tang Yun that much now. Was a good thing or a bad thing. But Tang Yun was sleeping in the bedroom upstairs. Now that the 3 of them were going to sleep, how could they sleep on the same bed? Tang Yun also realized that it was inappropriate for the 3 of them to sleep together. So she took the initiative. Why don't I sleep on the sofa downstairs? Meng Yao was a little embarrassed after hearing Tang Yun's words. You are a guest. How can you sleep on the sofa? If you want to sleep, it should be Shu. Ah, why me? Yushu asked innocently. Huh. Tang Yin knew that Meng Yao was being polite. How could she let Yushu sleep on the sofa? So she smiled. Is there a guest room here? Maybe I can sleep in the guest room? Yes, it's just upstairs beside the master bedroom. I'll clean it up for you. Meng Yao suddenly remembered that there was a guest room in the house. Yushu wanted to say that it was Shield Bro's room upstairs, but Meng Yao was quick to say that it was a guest room and needed to be cleaned up. It was obvious that it hadn't been used for a long time. Yushu couldn't help but feel dejected. Her plan to trick Tang Yin had failed. Linny waited for the three girls to go upstairs. After a while, he came out of the room and came to the living room. General Weiwu looked at Lin Yi curiously. It seemed to have sensed the change in Lin Yi's strength, but it couldn't speak the human language. It barked twice, but Lin Yi ignored it. It could only continue lying on the floor. Lin Yi used the landline phone in the villa and called Old Lin. Old Lin was in the toilet when he picked up the phone. He almost dropped the phone into the manure pit when it rang. What are you doing? Can't you call later? You're not going to the toilet again, are you? Linny could guess what Old Lin was doing from his tone. Old Lin humphed. What's the matter? Old man, I dropped a level. I'm a normal person now. Linny didn't waste any time and directly told him about the trouble he was in. A normal person? What happened? Old Lin was startled. He didn't have the time to scold Lin Yi for calling at the wrong time, so he quickly asked, My meridians are all damaged. I can't train my chi. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and told Old Lin everything that happened. So you're saying that your meridians were destroyed by yourself? Old Lin's tone changed after hearing Lin Yi's story. Yes, Lin Yi was helpless. Old man, you're a miracle doctor. Do you have a solution? No. Old man Lin said straightforwardly. What's wrong with you? Aren't you being too careless? Forget it. According to what you said, it's not your fault. Hurry up and pack your bags and come back. Then focus on training your physical kung fu. I don't think you can stay in Songshan anymore. You'll only die if you stay there. Chapter 905. Showdown with the Miss. There are many spiritual practitioners in this world with damaged meridians, and many of them are my friends. If I had a way, I would have healed them a long time ago. Why would I wait until now? Old Lin explained. But there's nothing wrong with physical kung fu. You can still reach the peak if you practice it well. Plus, according to your analysis, there might be some unexpected benefits in that stone door. You might even be able to recover your strength, and then you'll be able to dominate the world with both internal and external skills. How could it be that simple? Lin Yi didn't know what to say after listening to Old Lin's words. It was as if practicing physical arts was an easy task for him, and he'd be able to reach the peak in the blink of an eye. But was that even possible? So what? Should I tell you that there's no hope for you, and that you should go home and farm? Old Lin rolled his eyes. Look at your Shift. Didn't he also practice physical before spiritual, becoming a dual practitioner? Dual practitioner. Lin Yi sweated. The old man's choice of words was quite bold. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Think about it yourself. Old Lin said. Look at Air Gooden. He's a physical practitioner too, right? Doesn't he look really strong? Can he be replicated? Do you have more of that liquid? Lin Yi rolled his eyes as well. No. Old Lin said straightforwardly. But I can try to make some more, but I won't care if I drink it to death. Lin Yi didn't have any temper left from Old Lin's words, but his mood was much better. All right, old man, I'll pack up and head back. We'll think of something when we get back. Echem, it's good that you're open-minded. All roads lead to Rome. Old Lin said, if it really doesn't work out, I'll let Air Gooden accompany you in the martial world. He'll be your personal bodyguard, and you can pretend to be a rich young master. That'll be awesome too. Lin Yi hung up, but Lin Yi had made his decision. It was time to go home. Although he had only been in Songshan for a little more than a month, he had already met a lot of people here. This experience was very precious, enough to make Lin Yi remember it for the rest of his life. There was the pure, beautiful, and strong-willed Tang Yun, the miss who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside, the cute, lively Shu. There was also that silly Ling Shan who used to go against him, but was now obedient. There was also Guan Xian, Xiao Xiao, Wang Xinyan, Sun Jingyi. Would these people become passers-by in this part of his life? Where would Kong Xiaobo, Fatty Lai, Huaijuan, and Guan Shuimin go after he left? No wonder the old man said that after completing this mission, he could retire peacefully. Previously, he thought that this mission was very simple, but now it seemed that it was not the case at all. Sitting in the familiar villa, Lin Yi was a little saddened. Perhaps he would have to leave tomorrow. Lin Yi remembered a poem. I leave quietly, just like I came quietly. I wave my sleeves, not taking a single cloud with me. Lin Yi felt that it was time for him to talk to the Mississippi. There were some things that had to be said. Before his enemies realized that his strength had disappeared, Lin Yi had to be prepared. At night, the Miss Yushu and Tang Yin woke up and came downstairs to see Lin Yi lying on the sofa watching TV, very relaxed. The three of them were a little nervous before, and their mood improved quite a bit. Lin Yi, are you all right? Meng Yao and Tang Yin were a little happy. And the injuries on my body are fine now. Lin Yi only mentioned the injuries on his body. He didn't mention anything about his strength. He wanted to talk about this with the Miss and Tang Yin separately. That's good. Tang Yin nodded. What do you want to eat? I'll cook for you. It's okay. I ate a cup of instant noodles before, so I'm not hungry. Lin Yi stood up. Yin, why don't you go home first? You've been out for 3 days. Uncle and Annie must be worried about you, right? Tang Yin heard Lin Yi's words and was a little disappointed. Was Lin Yi kicking her out? Plus, under normal circumstances, Lin Yi rarely called her Yin in such an intimate way in front of outsiders. Tang Yin felt that something was off. She couldn't blame Tang Yin for thinking like that. Lin Yi just woke up, and she wanted to get closer to Lin Yi, but Lin Yi told her to go home. Tang Yin felt wronged, but she was also a little envious of the Miss and Yushu. Okay, but Tang Yin still nodded obediently. I'll ask you out for dinner later. Why don't you go back and tell Uncle and Annie that you're safe? Lin Yi felt Tang Yin's disappointment and knew that she misunderstood. But there were some things that Lin Yi couldn't explain in front of the three of them. Tang Yin heard that Lin Yi wanted to ask her out later, and she was happy again. Okay, I'll wait for your call. Lin Yi's weird actions made Meng Yao suspicious. After Tang Yin left, the Miss frowned. Why did you let Tang Yin go? I'd like to invite you out for a meal to celebrate your recovery from a serious illness. After spending 3 days together, Miss and Tang Yin had developed a subtle friendship between them. There's no rush. Lin Yi shook his head, and his expression suddenly became serious. Yao Shu, there's something important I need to tell you. What is it? Meng Yao froze. She didn't think that Lin Yi would talk to her in such a serious tone. Just say it. Yeah, Shield bro, your expression is so scary. Yushu also wasn't used to Lin Yi's tone. Huh? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Then I'll tell you the truth. Although my injuries are healed, I lost my strength. Lost your strength? What do you mean? Meng Yao paused. She didn't understand what Lin Yi meant. To put it simply, I'm like a normal person now. Lin Yi pretended to be relaxed. When I fought with Ma Zhu, I used that ultimate move, but it wasn't an ultimate move at all. I used it with the intention of dying with him. Although I came back to life, that move was a move that would destroy both sides. Ma Zhu was crippled by me, but I wasn't much better off. My strength dropped drastically as well. Chapter 906. Lin Yi resigned. Yeah, what do I have to do to help you recover? Yushu asked anxiously. I've read in martial arts novels that the main character needs to cultivate with someone to recover his strength. Is that true? Does he need Yao to sacrifice herself? Puffed. Lin Yi almost burst out laughing at Yushu's words. This girl was a clown. Lin Yi was used to her personality, and he didn't want to part with her. But there were some things he had to make a choice. Shu, don't interrupt. Listen to Lin Yi. Meng Yao glared at Yushu. She couldn't help but think that if it was really like what Shu said, that they had to use that method to help Lin Yi recover his strength, would she accept it? Maybe. After all, he lost his strength because of her. He almost lost his life. So what if she made some sacrifices? It wasn't because of the relationship between a man and a woman, but because a life for a life. It was her compensation to him. Meng Yao comforted herself like that. But why would he stay with her when he had Tang Yun? Meng Yao shook her head and threw those unrealistic thoughts to the back of her head. You've been fooled by those novels. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Those are all excuses the main characters find for their lustful behavior. Ugh. Are you lustful, shield bro? Yushu asked. Lin Yi couldn't answer that. It was human nature. He didn't want to lie. Shu, what's with all the bullshit? Don't disturb him. Let him talk. How can he recover his strength? Meng Yao glared at Yushu as she scolded, annoyed. Oh, okay. Then tell me, shield bro, how can I recover my strength? Yao Yao, and I will be your strongest shield. Yushu nodded. How? Lin Yi sighed softly. I haven't found a way to recover yet, so I'm actually resigning today. Are leaving? Meng Yao froze and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. Lin Yi's words were too much of shock to her. She couldn't accept it. Why did he suddenly want to leave when everything was fine just now? Lin Yi nodded. I'm going to find a way to recover my strength. Can't we find it here? Meng Yao was starting to panic. I took Uncle Chu's money and came here to accompany you, but I have lost the ability to protect you. Why should I stay here? Lin Yi shrugged. Head, don't worry. After I leave, Uncle Chu will find a new follower for you. Maybe he'll be more obedient than me and won't make you angry. Meng Yao wanted to say, I don't want you, I want you. However, the words were stuck at the tip of her tongue, and she couldn't say them. She looked at Lin Yi in a daze, feeling that this was a bit unreal. Was he really going to leave? So soon? Oh, it's fine. You have money anyway. You don't care about that 30,000. You don't need a salary. Yao Yao sis, and I will take care of you. Yushu didn't think as much as Meng Yao. She said without hesitation, when you recover your strength, you can ask for a raise. Lin Yi smiled. Don't say stupid things, Shu. You're not stupid, are you? Yushu looked at Lin Yi in shock. Her eyes were wide open, and she finally lowered her head and didn't say anything. You really want to leave? I know that you don't care about that 30,000. Meng Yao bit her lips and looked at Lin Yi. You said that we're friends. You lost your strength because of us. How could we kick you out just because of that? Do you think that I, Meng Yao, would do something like that? Huh? Lin Yi looked at the Mississippi. He didn't want to leave, but he was clear-headed. I'm the one who asked to leave. It has nothing to do with you. All right, I'll leave first. Before I leave, I need to talk to Tang Yun. Meng Yao looked at Lin Yi, wanted to say something. She shut her mouth after seeing Lin Yi get up and walk towards the villa's door. Lin Yi left just like that, disappearing from Meng Yao and Yushu's sight. Meng Yao retracted her gaze. She didn't know if it was melancholy or something else, but she wasn't in a good mood. Meng Yao's good mood from Lin Yi's recovery disappeared at this moment. It was as if she had lost something precious. She had the urge to cry, but when she looked at Shu beside her, she didn't cry. Yao Yao, you have to be strong. How can you cry for a man? If he wants to leave, then so be it. It's not that you want to let him down, it's that he wants to leave. Although Meng Yao said that in her heart, she really felt terrible. Yao Yao sis, is Shield Bro really leaving? Yushu asked. It's true. Meng Yao nodded. But I don't want him to leave. Yushu said honestly. I know, but we can't stop him. Meng Yao shook her head. Not even Uncle Chu? Yushu asked suddenly. Daddy. Meng Yao paused. She suddenly remembered that her dad had found Lin Yi. Would Lin Yi listen to her dad? He should, right? Otherwise, why would he come all the way here for 30,000 yuan and do such a hard job? Meng Yao's eyes lit up at the thought as she stumbled to the phone and dialed Pengzhan's number. Yao Yao, how's Lin Yi? Is he awake? Pengzhan had just gotten off work when he received his daughter's call. He didn't hire a chauffeur for the past few days, so we didn't hire a chauffeur. He was used to driving himself. Yeah, Meng Yao nodded. Daddy, but Lin Yi's leaving. He's resigning. Resigning? Why? Pengzhan blinked. Is it because it's too dangerous? Pengzhan was worried when Lin Yi was unconscious. This time, Lin Yi was in too much danger. Meng Yao had already told him about the process. Lin Yi almost lost his life. No, his injuries are healed, but he doesn't have his skills anymore. Meng Yao said. He said that he's like a normal person now. He can't protect me and Shu anymore. He's resigning. Chapter 907. Marriage Matters. Pingjan arrived at the villa to see his daughter and Shu sitting on the sofa, not watching TV or doing anything else. He couldn't help but sigh. Yao Yao, what happened? We didn't make it clear on the way here. Can you tell me in detail and we can think of a solution together? Daddy. Meng Yao wanted to cry, but Shu was there, and she had to maintain the image of a big sister. She took a deep breath and controlled her emotions, telling Pingjan everything that had happened. But Lin Yi didn't go into too much detail, so Meng Yao repeated his words to Pingjan, who fell into deep thought as well. I got a general idea of what Lin Yi is thinking from what he said. Pingjan sighed. First, he wants to leave because he doesn't have the strength to protect you anymore. But that's not a big deal. Being a follower doesn't mean that he needs to protect you. I can hire another bodyguard for you, but that's not a big deal. But the key is Lin Yi's attitude, whether he's willing to stay or not. I'll have to talk to him about this. Secondly, little E is afraid that after he loses his strength, he will attract revenge from his enemies. This problem, if I hire a powerful bodyguard, then it won't be a problem. So, I need to know what little E is thinking. Okay. Meng Yao nodded, relieved after hearing her father's words. Yao Yao, didn't you want to kick Lin Yi out before? Pingjan couldn't help but tease. Now that Lin Yi is quitting, why don't you agree? Oh, that's different from before. He's our savior now. How can we be ungrateful? Meng Yao said as she looked at Shu. Right, Shu? Yeah. Yao Yao has already decided to marry him. Yushu nodded. Meng Yao almost exploded from anger. Why did you have to go along with it? Just say, yeah, why did you have to say all that bullshit? Yao Yao, come with me, Pingjan said after a pause. He stood up and waved at his daughter. Oh, Meng Yao blinked. What was it that they couldn't talk about in the living room? There was only Shu in the living room. She wasn't an outsider. Meng Yao, however, saw that her father was already walking towards Lin Yi's room. Meng Yao had no choice but to follow. Pingjan walked into Lin Yi's room and waited for Meng Yao to come in before closing the door. Yao Yao, have a seat. Oh, Daddy, what's the matter? You still want to hide it from Shu? Meng Yao looked at her father in confusion. She was afraid that Shu would be unhappy. In the past, Shu would never hide anything from her. Yushu, on the other hand, wasn't unhappy at all. She was just a little curious, and after Pingjan and Meng Yao entered the room, Yushu made her way to Lin Yi's room and listened carefully. Yao Yao, tell Daddy the truth. Do you like Lin Yi? Pingjan looked at his daughter and asked after some hesitation. Meng Yao froze. She looked at Pingjan dumbfoundedly and blushed. Dad, what are you talking about? Why would I like Lin Yi? Pingjan looked at his daughter's nervous expression and laughed. Then do you want Lin Yi to stay? I do. Meng Yao stuttered. But what does this have to do with liking Lin Yi? You need to have a good reason if you want Lin Yi to stay, right? Pingjan smiled. Lin Yi is a man of integrity. He's injured and can't carry out his duties anymore. That's why he's resigning. Think about it. If we told him that we'd take care of him and let him stay in the villa with his personality, would he accept it? Meng Yao paused and shook her head slowly. Lin Yi might look shameless sometimes, but he was a man of principle. It would be very difficult for him to stay. I don't think so. Otherwise, he would have stayed long ago. So, if you want Lin Yi to stay, you need a good reason, Pingjan said. But Lin Yi isn't related to us at all. Why would he stay? Meng Yao was starting to understand what her daddy was saying. If Lin Yi was her boyfriend, then perhaps he'd stay. But was he really? He wasn't. In other words, if Lin Yi becomes a family with us, why would he leave? Pingjan looked at his daughter's embarrassed face. He didn't expect her to admit anything, but he could guess what she was thinking. I want you to marry Lin Yi. What do you think? Meng Yao's eyes widened. She looked at her father in disbelief. She had long noticed that her father's attitude towards Lin Yi was unusual. After the first family dinner, Meng Yao discussed this with Yushu. Yushu's answer was that either Uncle Chu wanted Lin Yi to be his son-in-law, or Lin Yi was his illegitimate child. Now, it seemed that her father had been thinking about this all along. Meng Yao was shocked. Did her father really want her to marry Lin? Was it true? Then, should he agree to it? Meng Yao's breathing quickened. There was a voice in her heart urging her to agree. Agree. Isn't this what you want? However, another cold voice sounded. Lin, he had a girlfriend. Lin, he has a girlfriend. Meng Yao said. That's just a girlfriend. They're not married yet? Peng Zhan narrowed his eyes. He looked at his daughter and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. You have to fight for it. I just want to ask your opinion. Meng Yao blushed. She didn't know how to answer. After a while, she said shyly. Marriage is a big thing. I don't have anyone I like. If Daddy wants to help me, I'll reluctantly agree. Anyway, he saved my life, so I should repay him. Peng Zhan smiled. It seemed that his daughter's attitude towards Lin Yi had changed a lot without him noticing. Then I'll talk to Lin Yi and see what he thinks. Okay. Meng Yao nodded shyly. Chapter 908. What about me? What about me? What about me? Yushu ran in. Yao, you're so mean. How could you forget about me? Meng Yao almost jumped out of her chair, startled by Yushu's sudden appearance. She couldn't hide things like this from Yushu, but Meng Yao was still very nervous right now. Someone barging in just like that was enough to scare her. Peng Zhan, on the other hand, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect Yushu to hear it, even though he was trying to avoid her. How could I forget about you? Peng Zhan smiled as he looked at his daughter's best friend. He knew Yushu's personality very well. She was crazy all the time, but she was very close to his daughter. If it were possible, they'd be good sisters for life. I'm the small wife, right, Yao? You promised me. Don't tell me you're going back on your word now. Yushu seemed to have heard everything Peng Zhan and Meng Yao had said. When did I go back on my word? Meng Yao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Buy one, get one free. I bet that Lin, you would be very happy. Peng Zhan looked at his daughter and didn't see any hidden emotions in her expression. He let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Shu, if you want to get married, and Yao doesn't mind, I don't mind either. But you have to talk to the Chun family yourself. Peng Zhan wasn't a stubborn man. He was just a normal businessman, but for some reason he'd come into contact with some hidden houses and sects, even higher existences. He didn't have much of an objection to his daughter and Shu marrying Lin Yi at the same time, as long as his daughter was happy. As for Yushu's house Chun, it was up to Yushu herself to convince them. He couldn't help much. Oh, really? Yushu paused, looking at Peng Zhan strangely. She'd always been one to mix truth with falsehood, and this time, she'd used the same tone to speak to Peng Zhan half-jokingly. She wanted to see what Peng Zhan's reaction would be, but Peng Zhan's attitude was completely unperturbed. He'd only asked for Meng Yao's opinion. Peng Zhan smiled and didn't say anything. He stood up and walked out of the room, thinking that it would be impossible for the two of them to be apart for the rest of their lives. It was rare for them to be this close, but Lin, he was still a problem. Lin, he had a girlfriend in school. What was his attitude towards her? Peng Zhan wasn't sure. It seemed that his daughter had acted a little too late. Lin, he had only been in Songshan for a little more than a month, but he had already established his own network. Even Lu Tianyi listened to him. Father was right. Lin, he was a talent. His future was limitless. Zhang Dazhou looked at his son, who had become a eunuch, and Ma Zhu, who had lost half his arm, in disbelief. How is this possible? Wasn't Ma Zhu a mystic mid-phase peak at the 8th level of his golden shield? How'd he get beaten up like this? Wasn't Lenny just a mystic early phase peak? There was such a huge gap between the two, and Ma Zhu had a godly skill protecting him. How'd he lose? Yao Wang, how's the situation? Is there any hope for my son to recover? Zhen Dazhou regretted it. If he hadn't wanted to deal with Lin Yi and let Meng Yao and Yushu go after getting the money, this wouldn't have happened. He wasn't willing to accept it, and besides the regret, there was a deep hatred. Lin Yi, Zhen Dazhou, wouldn't have lived in this world if I didn't kill him. No. King Pharmacist shook his head. Although I'm called King Pharmacist, it's only because of my excellent medical skills. Your son's balls were shot by a bullet. Unless I have the ability to make a dead tree bloom and bear fruit, it's impossible for this thing to regenerate. Dad, I don't want to be a eunuch. I haven't had enough fun. Sob, sob, sob. Zhen Yingjun cried. He hated Lin Yi to the core. Although Lin Yi turned him into a eunuch, it was just a fake one. But now he was a real eunuch. Although it was all Yushu's fault, Zhen Yingjun hated Lin Yi. If it wasn't for Lin Yi who injured Ma Zhu, Yushu wouldn't have the chance to take advantage of him. In the end, it was all because of Lin Yi. He wanted Lin Yi to die, and he couldn't be more dead. Son, don't worry. Even if I have to go bankrupt, I'll treat you. Zhen Dazhou clenched his teeth. Although he earned a lot of money, he didn't have any descendants. What was the use of money? Zhao Qibing's eyes lit up when he heard that Zhen Dazhou was going bankrupt to treat Zhen Yingjun. He knew that Zhen Dazhou just got 250 million from Pengzhan, and he was drooling over it. If he could get this 250 million, the damage from the collapse of the skyscraper would be nothing. Building another grand skyscraper wouldn't be a dream anymore. With that in mind, Zhao Qibing said to Yao Wang, Yao Wang, can you think of another way? Can you treat Zhen Yingjun? I'll think about it. I'll look up some information and see if there's any good way. Yao Wang knew that Zhao Qibing didn't want to give up such a good opportunity to earn money, but he couldn't think of any good way to treat Zhen Yingjun right now. Although Yao Wang's main purpose was to trick people, there were techniques to it. He didn't just lie randomly. It wasn't wrong for him to treat people more and more sick, but the premise was that he had to cure one disease and create another one. Zhen Yingjun's current condition made him feel helpless. However, in order to earn money from masturbating, Yao Wang thought that he should think about it carefully and see if he could come up with a solution. Okay, thanks for the trouble, Yao Wang. Zhen Dazhou didn't know that Zhao Qibing and Yao Wang wanted to continue scamming money. He thought that after this period of contact, they got familiar with each other and formed a friendship, so Yao Wang couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Sure. Yao Wang nodded. Right, Master Ma, what did the boss say? Zhen Dazhou turned to Ma Zhu. Ma Zhu was also in a miserable state. His body was covered in bandages. The boss is fine. My master will send some of his brothers over. Ma Zhu said sadly. He was the youngest and most promising disciple in the sect, and he had reached the 8th level of Golden Shield at such a young age. He was a physical practitioner at the peak of the middle phase of Mystic Division, and he was the hope of the entire sect. Chapter 909. Yao Wang's suspicion he was crippled. Not only did he lose an arm, but half of his body was also destroyed. Even if the half of his body was not injured, it was still injured by the explosion. He only had the strength of the 3rd level of the Golden Bell Shield left. He could still be a hooligan, but it was impossible for him to be a master. Even if he recovered and started training from the beginning, it would be much more difficult due to the loss of an arm. Plus, even if he started training from the beginning, how long would it take for him to regain his current strength? Luckily, his master heard that he was beaten up like this and said that he would avenge him. His master already promised him that once he arranged things in the sect, he would send a new master over to his boss side and come to Songshan to avenge him. He was going to kill Lin Yi in-house Chu. That's good. Dazhou didn't have the strength to deal with Lin Yi at the moment, so he could only rely on Ma Zhu. Ma Zhu had the same hatred as him, and he didn't believe that Ma Zhu would take this lying down. Dazhou pretended to ask casually, Master Ma, what did your master say about Lin Yi injuring you this badly? Lin Yi is going to die. My master is going to kill Lin Yi and Pengzhan's families. Ma Zhu didn't hide it and smiled coldly. They're all going to die. Ma Zhu didn't doubt that Lin Yi and Chu Pengzhan wouldn't die after his master left the mountain. It didn't matter how many helpers they found. They were all going to die. It was hard to say if his master could kill the helpers they found, but no matter how strong these helpers were, they wouldn't be able to kill his master. The reason was simple. His master had completed his Golden Bell Shield, and he had no weaknesses. Even an Earth-class peak master's attack wouldn't have any effect on him. Even if Lin Yi's master came and used the same Chi Bomb on him, it wouldn't work. Golden Bell Shield was undefeatable. Ma Zhu's master was called Invincible Gene. Of course, he wasn't called Invincible Gene before, but after completing his Golden Bell Shield, he changed his name to Invincible Gene. Even if a road roller passed by him, he wouldn't be injured, let alone a normal master. Great. If there's anything you need our Jean family's help with, Grandpa Ma, feel free to let us know. Jean Dajo was overjoyed. There was hope for revenge this time. On the other hand, Jean Ingjun was overjoyed. Lin, he was dead this time. We'll talk about this when the time comes. Ma Zhu was frustrated. Even if he killed Lin, Yi, and Pingzhan, it wouldn't be enough to compensate for the damage he had suffered. He was crippled, completely crippled. What should he do in the future? But Ma Zhu is injured like this, but Lin Yi is fine? Zhao Qibing didn't believe that Ma Zhu's master could kill Lin Yi. When Zhen Yingjun found Ma Zhu, he said that he could definitely kill Lin Yi. What about now? Zhen Yingjun was crippled. Ma Zhu was also crippled. And these two cripples sent him money again. Although Zhao Qibing could earn a lot of money, he wanted Lin Yi to die more. If Ma Zhu really killed Lin Yi, Zhao Qibing would rather not earn his medical fees, or even give him some money. Logically speaking, Lin Yi should be heavily injured as well. Yao Wang sighed. Yao Wang sighed and said, according to my analysis, Lin Yi's injury this time is very serious and fatal. If he could blow Ma Zhu up like this, he probably isn't any better. If I'm not wrong, his meridians are all broken. Broken meridians? Doesn't that mean he's a cripple? Although Zhao Qibing didn't practice, he understood the situation of a practitioner. Yes, Yao Wang nodded. Even if he's a doctor, I'm afraid he can't recover to his original state. So, Lin Yi should be the weakest right now. That makes sense. Zhao Qibing nodded. He was about to say something when he raised his head and saw Sihua walking in. He quickly asked, Sihua, you're back just in time. What did the people you sent out say? Lin, he seems to be fine. He left House Chu's villa as if he wasn't injured at all, but I didn't see Li Fu. I think he either didn't recover or died. Sihua said, Lin, he recovered? That's impossible. Yao Wang was shocked. Is his medical skills really that good? How can he recover from such a serious injury? He can use pure qi to heal himself? Could it be that his strength has recovered? Ma Zhu froze, and hatred appeared on his face. If Lin, he was in a miserable state, he would feel better. However, Lin, he was perfectly fine. This was unacceptable. I'm not sure. Is he really that good? Yao Wang frowned and said in disbelief, is Lin, he not human? Fuck, how can he be so strong? Zhao Qibing's eyes widened. Fortunately, he was prepared for this. Lin, he was the same before. He didn't have much confidence in those who boasted that they could kill Lin Yi in one hit. He was confident that Lin Yi wouldn't die. This guy was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. No. Yao Wang suddenly slapped his thigh. You said you didn't see Li Fu? Yeah, Li Fu didn't appear. Pengzhan has been driving by himself these days. Sihua said, ha ha. I know, this time, Lin Yi is injured too. He doesn't have extra pure qi to heal Li Fu anymore. Yao Wang laughed. I'm afraid that the reason Lin Yi can go out now is because his injuries are healed on the surface. In fact, his strength hasn't recovered yet. Oh, if that's the case, then it's a good chance to deal with Lin Yi. Ma Zhu's eyes suddenly burned with hatred. I'm just guessing, but let me give you a piece of advice, Mr. Ma Zhu. With your injuries, you shouldn't fight Lin Yi. Yao Wang shook his head and said faintly, even if his strength hasn't recovered, you've lost most of your strength. You're not much different from him. Don't even talk about Lin Yi. With your current condition, you won't be able to escape even if you're surrounded by a few strong men. Although Yao Wang's words were harsh, Ma Zhu knew that Yao Wang was speaking the truth. He couldn't help but lower his head. Indeed, with his current half-baked strength, he wasn't anyone's opponent at all. Half of his body was broken, and he didn't have any good attacks. He used to rely on his sturdy body to fight randomly, but now, even if he met a few strong men, they could kill him, because half of his body was no different from a normal person. Chapter 9:10. Chapter 9:09. Lin Yi's final decision. Haha, Ma Zhu, aren't we thinking the same thing? Qibing smiled helplessly. Both of my skyscrapers were destroyed by Lin Yi, and even my legs were broken by Lin Yi. Don't I want him dead? I want him dead too. but I know that I can't kill him with my current strength. I can only wait for my father to send a master, or for Lin Yi's other enemies to kill him. Ma Zhu nodded, knowing that Qibing was telling the truth. Does Lin Yi have any enemies recently? At a time like this, shouldn't we let his enemies do it? Qibing turned to Zihua and asked, other than Zhang Wen, there's only Zhong Pingliang left. Zihua said helplessly. I only know of these two, but Zhang Wen has been quiet lately, and Zhong Pingliang is with you, Master Bing. None of them are a match for Lin Yi. All right, when Xiao Ji from the Xiao family came to visit me a few days ago, he seemed to have asked about Pengzhan and the masters around him. Oh, then did you receive them? Did you tell him about Pengzhan? Qibing asked. The Xiao family never had any grudges with us, and our relationship was quite good. I heard that they were about to be kicked out of the noble house list by House Yu, but a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The Xiao family is still useful, so I didn't neglect them. Zihua said. As for Pengzhan, of course I told him. From his tone, it was obvious that he had a grudge against Pengzhan, so I told Xiao Ji about the two masters around Pengzhan. But when Xiao Ji heard that Lin Yi was a mystic early phase, he hesitated and didn't say anything else. Oh, how about this? You find a few hooligans to test Lin Yi and see if he still has the strength. If he really doesn't have a strength, we'll spread the news. Qibing thought about it. I don't believe that Lin Yi and Pengzhan don't have any other enemies other than us. It seems like the Xiao family wants to deal with them as well. We just have to sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. Yes. Siwan nodded and left. After leaving the villa, Lin Yi drove to Pengzhan department store. He needed to make some preparations before his date with Tang Yun. Lin Yi didn't hide from the people around the mansion. Lin Yi roughly guessed that they were sent by Zhao Qibing. After Zheng Yingjun and Ma Zhu were injured, they would definitely go to Zhao Yaowang for treatment. It was normal for Zhao Qibing to send people to spy on him. So, the more Lin Yi didn't care about them and acted as if nothing happened, the more he could confuse people and make them think that Lin Yi had recovered all his strength. However, Lin Yi didn't think about Faubert. He neglected the fact that Zhao Qibing had even spied on Faubert. But even if Lin Yi knew about it, he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. He'd only healed the external wounds on his body, and the internal injuries in his meridians hadn't healed at all. There was no way he could treat Uncle Fu. Lin Yi drove to Pengzhan department store openly to make people think that he wasn't injured. Lin Yi had to hide this news as much as possible before Pengzhan found a useful master. Lin Yi wanted to leave tomorrow, but Zheng Yingjun's problem wasn't completely solved yet. If Pengzhan didn't find a substitute bodyguard, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to leave peacefully. So, Lin Yi could only hold on and be careful to keep a low profile so that others wouldn't be able to use it against him. However, what Lin Yi didn't expect was that Yaowang had already guessed his true strength and was secretly launching a test plan. Lin Yi parked his car in the underground parking lot of Pengzhan department store and asked the security guard before coming to the jewelry area on the first floor of Pengzhan department store. Hello, sir. Would you like to choose jewelry? Lin Yi just arrived in front of a counter called Lu Weishan Jewelry Store, and a shopping guide walked over and asked enthusiastically. Yes. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't expect this jewelry store to have such good service. Lin Yi wanted to look around casually, but Lin Yi decided to buy here. In fact, in Pengzhan department store, every jewelry store's goods were similar. The main difference was the service. Sir, what do you want to choose? Use it yourself or give it to a friend? The shopping guide asked. I want to buy a ring for my girlfriend, Lin Yi said. Ring? Girlfriend? The shopping guide nodded. Is it a normal gift or a proposal ring? A proposal ring. Lin Yi sighed slightly. She was the first girl who confirmed a relationship with him. Before leaving, Lin Yi made a decision. Here, sir. Look, these are all wedding rings. What price range do you want? We have rings from thousands to tens of thousands. The shopping guide pointed at a ring in the counter. Just this one. How much is it? Lin Yi wasn't good at jewelry, and he didn't know how to choose. He chose a ring that looked like a diamond because Lin Yi heard that the bigger the diamond, the better the diamond. This one, the salesgirl jumped. Lin, he had his eyes on the treasure of the store. After all, her heart jumped. If she sold it, how much commission would she get? She just came to work 2 days ago. If she could really make this deal, it would be a big profit. What's wrong? Lin, he saw the shopping guide hesitating, so he asked. It's nothing. The shopping guide shook her head and said, This ring is the treasure of our store. It's locked in the counter. Please wait a moment. I'll call the manager and ask him to open it for you. Okay. Lenny nodded. When the shopping guide just wanted to make a phone call, a shopping guide from a store called Yin Guangdu Jewelry looked at the shopping guide in front of Lin E with some sarcasm. You first ask him if he can buy it before you make a phone call. You call all day long. Just a phone bill is a waste. Lin E frowned. He thought, I'm buying jewelry. What does it have to do with her? Is she jealous because I didn't buy it from her store? However, Lin, he didn't want to cause trouble at the moment. He also suppressed his anger and didn't say anything. I'm sorry, sir. Please ignore her. The shopping guide smiled at Lin E with a little embarrassment and then continued to call. Chapter 9:11. Something important to tell you. In fact, this Yin Guangdou jewelry saleswoman could tell that Lin E wanted to buy it, but she didn't think that Lin E could afford it. She just wanted to ruin his business. It's nothing. I'll buy this one. Call the manager to take it out. I don't need to look at it. Just take me to the card. Lin E was a bit annoyed, but he was too lazy to argue with her. He was now walking around with the principle of being low-key. Just like that? The saleswoman was shocked. She didn't think that Lin E would buy it without even looking at it. She couldn't help but be stunned. Buying such an expensive thing without looking at it carefully? But when she saw the diamond card Lin E took out, she immediately understood that Lin E had the ability to do so. She secretly rejoiced in her heart. Good people will be rewarded. Her principle of serving passionately was not wrong. And the saleswoman from Yin Guangdou Jewelry was a bit dumbfounded. Those who could take out this kind of diamond VIP card were big clients of the company. These people all had the ability to talk to the higher-ups. Thinking of her sharp words just now, if Lin E told the higher-ups of them all, not only would she lose her job, but even her boss's brand would be removed from them all. Thinking of this, the saleswoman's face immediately changed. She wanted to say a few words to Lin E, but Lin E had already turned around to swipe the card. In fact, Lin E didn't want to argue with this saleswoman at all. With the 300,000 yuan ring, Lin E drove in the direction of the hospital. Tang Yun's house hadn't been renovated yet, so she was still living in the hospital. Lin E called Tang Yun and asked her to wait for him at the entrance of the hospital. When Lin E arrived at the hospital, Tang Yun had already come out and stood at the entrance. The breeze gently blew her hair and skirt. Under the sunset, she looked like a silhouette of a beautiful girl, just like the first time Lin E saw her. Oh, Lin E took a deep breath. He had made up his mind, but Lin E didn't know Tang Yun's decision yet. However, no matter what Tang Yun chose, Lin E would support her. Yin Yun. Lin E opened the window and called Tang Yun. Tang Yun seemed to be in good spirits. She turned around and saw Lin E. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. She quickly ran over and opened the door. This feeling is so good. I even thought that the previous 3 days were just a dream. You didn't seem to be injured. Lin E heard Tang Yun's words and couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't know how to respond to Tang Yun. He didn't know what to say. What's wrong? Tang Yun saw that Lin Yi's smile seemed to be a bit strange and asked curiously. Nothing. Let's find a place to eat first. What do you want to eat? Lin E changed the topic. Okay. Tang Yun nodded. You just recovered from a serious illness. Of course, you can eat whatever you want. My mom wanted a barbecue for you, but it can't be done in the hospital. Maybe after the new house is renovated? After the new house was renovated? Where would he be at that time? He would probably be back in his hometown. Then let's have a starry night. Lin, he hadn't brought Tang Yun to such a high-class hotel before. It wasn't that Lin, he couldn't afford it. It was that Lin, he wasn't a person who cared about extravagance. He wasn't very interested in these high-class hotels. But today, it was his and Tang Yun's last dinner. It was a farewell dinner. Lin, he wanted to eat solemnly. Even if Tang Yin didn't agree with his decision, it would still be a beautiful memory for him. Seeing Lin drive the car into the parking lot of the Starry Night Hotel, Tang Yin was a bit surprised. This place is very expensive, right? Why are we here all of a sudden? It's just the two of us. We could just eat something simple. Didn't you say that I just recovered from a serious illness? Then let's come here to celebrate. Lin said, if that's the case, okay. Tang Yin was a bit distressed. She wasn't a greedy and vain girl. Her personality was completely different from her mother. From Tang Yin's perspective, even if you were poor, you had to have a backbone. Lin, he asked for a small private room. Because it was an ordinary private room, he didn't need to make a reservation in advance. The best hotels Tang Yin had been to were the Pengzhan Business Hotel and the Starlight Hotel that Miss had treated them to. Lin, he passed the menu to Tang Yin. Tang Yin flipped through the menu and was shocked. The dishes inside were really expensive. The price of an ordinary dish was enough to eat a meal outside. Tang Yin really didn't dare to order it. She hesitated for a bit and returned the menu to Lin. You can order it. Lin knew what Tang Yin was thinking. He casually ordered a few dishes and sent the waiter out. He came here mainly to have a showdown with Tang Yin, not to eat. Waste of money. Tang Yin looked at Lin and pouted. Although she knew that Lin could earn money, she didn't like to waste it. Money could be spent in the right place, but a meal like this didn't necessarily taste good. Tang Yin's heart ached when she spent a lot of money. I'm not married yet, and you're already controlling me? Lin laughed. How about it? Do you want to be controlled? Tang Yin's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at Lin. Okay, as long as you are willing to control me. When Lin said this, although he was smiling, it was a little sad. Only if you don't want me. Tang Yin heard Lin Yi's reply and was a little proud. I'm afraid that you don't want me. Lin Yi's expression became serious as he said solemnly. Tang Yin froze and looked at Lin Yi in surprise. Although Lin Yi's words were a joke, Lin Yi's expression made Tang Yin confused. Why are you so serious? Lin Yi just wanted to answer, but there was a knock on the door and the waiter began to serve the dishes. The dishes Lin Yi ordered were all simple stir-fried dishes, nothing complicated. It didn't take long for everything to be served. This was also Lin Yi's intention. The goal was to prevent the waiters from interrupting him in Tang Yin's conversation. Tang Yin, I asked you out this time because I have something very important to tell you. Lin Yi waited for the waiter to leave and said. Chapter 9:12. I do. Tang Yin was a little perturbed. Could it be that Lin, he didn't want her anymore? His relationship with Meng Yao and Yushu was getting better and better, and she couldn't compare to them at all. It was possible that Lin asked her out to break up with her. Plus, it was the first time Lin asked her out to eat at such a high-class restaurant. This made Tang Yin's heart beat faster and faster. Yin, actually my injuries aren't completely healed. Lin, he decided to make it short. He didn't need any foreshadowing. Tang Yin knew about his injuries from Meng Yao and Yushu. So Lin, he only needed to get to the point. Although my external injuries are healed, my strength is gone. Would that be a big deal? Will it be dangerous? Tang Yin was shocked and asked subconsciously. She didn't expect that Lin, he wanted to talk to her about this. Although it wasn't that Lin, he wanted to dump her. But the fact that Lin, he was talking about his injuries in such a serious manner meant that it must be very serious. So Tang Yin was very worried. It won't be dangerous because of my injuries, but if my enemies know that I've lost my strength, I'm afraid that I'll be in danger. Lin, he smiled bitterly. Then why are you telling me? You shouldn't tell anyone. Tang Yin was shocked. But I won't tell anyone. I'll keep your secret. Yin, you misunderstand. Lin, he smiled. Seeing Tang Yin's nervous reaction calmed him down a lot. Tang Yin cared about him. Misunderstand? Tang Yin paused. Yes, I'm telling you this because I've already resigned from Meng Yao. I won't be their bodyguard anymore. Lin Yi said. Tang Yin heard Lin Yi's words and was slightly surprised, but she was happy. Although Lin Yi had lost his strength, he had left Meng Yao and Yushu. Wasn't this what she wanted to see? Where will you live in the future? Tang Yin's face reddened. Why don't you move in after my new house is renovated? Huh? Lin Yi looked at the shy Tang Yun, and his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't easy for the conservative Tang Yun to say something like this. However, Lin Yi could only shake his head. I've said it before. If I don't recover my strength, my enemies might come looking for me. I can't drag you guys down with me. Then you mean? Tang Yun suddenly felt uneasy, as if something big was about to happen. The joy of Lin Yi not being Meng Yao's bodyguard vanished in an instant. I'm leaving Songshan, going back to my hometown. Lin Yi was a little sad when he said this, but he still had to say it. The music ends and the people leave. This was the law. You don't want me anymore? You really don't want me anymore? Tang Yun felt as if her heart was hit by a hammer. It hurt so much. Although she had thought about what would happen if Lin Yi didn't want her anymore, she didn't think that this day would come so soon. It's not that I don't want you anymore. It's that you don't want me anymore. Lin Yi was shocked by Tang Yun's reaction. In his memory, Tang Yun was a strong person. I don't want you anymore. Why wouldn't I want you anymore? Tang Yun wanted to cry. She didn't understand what Lin Yi meant and thought that he was making excuses. I don't have my strength anymore. I won't be as famous as I am now. I'll be very poor. Do you still want me? Lin Yi could basically confirm Tang Yun's feelings. It seemed that he didn't buy the ring for nothing. However, there were some things that needed to be said clearly. Lin Yi, I'm going to bite you to death. Tang Yun was panicking. She stared at Lin Yi with her big teary eyes. In your eyes, am I someone who despises the poor and loves the rich? Am I that bad? That's my mother, not me. Tang Yun was a little angry. He actually used her mother as a comparison. But Mrs. Tang did make Tang Yun worry a lot. Lin Yi sighed. He had to tell Tang Yun the worst possibility. After all, Tang Yun was a girl from the big city. He didn't know if she could handle the boredom in the village. It's very remote. There are no tall buildings there. It's not as prosperous as the city. There aren't even cars. A lot of people don't have telephones. They communicate with each other by shouting. The houses are very old. There's no heating in the winter. We have to burn our own firewood. There's no modern washroom. There's only public washroom. You're a girl. Can you endure all this? Of course I can. Don't forget that my family used to live in a bungalow in the slums. We also have to burn our own firewood in the winter. There's no independent washroom. It's also a public washroom. What you said is perfect for me. It's like it's tailor-made for me. Tang Yun was so excited that her words became incoherent. She finally found a sense of superiority over Miss. But if I can't recover my strength in this lifetime, you'll have to stay with me in the village for the rest of your life. Are you really willing? Lin Yi heard Tang Yun's words. He was very touched. I'm willing. Tang Yun nodded firmly. She didn't care if Lin Yi had strength or not. She didn't care if Lin Yi had money or not. She only cared about Lin Yi as a person. Okay, then I'll go back first. You can finish high school or university here. Then you can come find me. Consider it as giving yourself some time to calm down. I hope you're not impulsive, Lin Yi said rationally. I'm not impulsive. Tang Yun shook her head. Tang Yun shook her head. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. But I do need to settle my parents down. I'm marrying into a rural area. I need to comfort them. But are you just brushing me off? You don't want me anymore, do you? Tang Yun gradually regained her calmness. She looked at Lin Yi. She wanted to see if he was lying to her. He wanted to comfort her first and then leave. Lin Yi suddenly took out a small box and put it in front of Tang Yun. No, I've thought about it for a long time before I said this to you. This is for you. Tang Yun paused, but she couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart. Although she hadn't opened the box yet, she had seen similar scenes in dramas. Could be a wedding ring. Chapter 9:13. Was it a coincidence or a plan? It's so beautiful. Tang Yun looked at the huge diamond on the ring in surprise. She couldn't contain her joy. Aren't you going to say something? Lin Yi took out the diamond ring and looked at Tang Yun. Are you really willing to come find me? I'm willing. Tang Yun nodded shyly. At this moment, she was like a bride who was about to enter the hall of marriage. Lin Yi put the ring on Tang Yun's finger and felt relieved. Although he lost his strength, he didn't know how his old man would react when he brought home a wife. Although this meal was a little sad, the atmosphere was very warm. Lin Yi was leaving, but Tang Yun wasn't disappointed, because in the near future, she would be leaving with him. After the meal, Tang Yun put the ring back into the box before leaving the room. "Why aren't you wearing it? Are you regretting?" Lin Yi joked. "Only an idiot would regret. I'm afraid that people will steal it. Now that you don't have any strength, I need to keep a low profile. I don't want to cause any unnecessary trouble." Tang Yun rolled her eyes at Lin Yi and carefully put the ring away. Huh, Lin Yi thought to himself. What an understanding girl. It would be nice to marry a girl like this, right? Lin Yi paid the bill and left the room with Tang Yun. What he didn't know was that Sihua's people had already made arrangements in the parking lot of Starlight Hotel. "Mr. Yang, thank you for your help." Sihua nodded to the manager of Starlight Hotel. "Haha, how can I not do my best when it's Master Bing's arrangement?" Mr. Yang smiled at Sihua. "It's not a big deal, it's nothing." Sihua nodded. "All right, Mr. Yang, you can go. There's nothing for you to do here. It's not good for you to be here." "All right, I'll be on my way then. I hope Sihua bro doesn't cause too much of a commotion and affect the shop's business." Mr. Yang said. "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Sihua nodded. After Mr. Yang left, Sihua got into a Buick MPV on the right side of the parking lot. The windows were covered with black film, so no one could see what was going on inside. In the parking lot, another white Nissan van was also ready. It was a very old and worn-out Nissan van. If one looked closely, they would find that it was actually an assembled car. This kind of car was also very popular with some gangsters. This kind of car was cheap and could carry people. It was the most suitable car for fighting and chopping people. When the police came, they didn't even want the car. They just left it behind and ran because the cost of a car was only a few thousand yuan. Lin Yi and Tang Yun came to the parking lot and got in the car. Lin Yi was about to start the car when the Jade sent a weak warning signal. Lin Yi and Tang Yun came to the parking lot and got into the car. Just when Lin Yi was about to start the car, the Jade sent a weak warning signal. Lin Yi was about to take a closer look when a white Nissan van stopped behind his car without any warning, completely blocking off his path to reverse. Lin Yi's car was parked in the parking lot. There were cars in front and on both sides, so he could only reverse out from the back. Lin Yi frowned. Why did this person park his car there? Was he doing it on purpose? Lin Yi honked twice to signal that he wanted to leave, but the Nissan van behind ignored him, as if it didn't hear Lin Yi's honk. Without a choice, Lin Yi got out of the car and went to the driver's side of the white Nissan van. He looked inside and saw a bald man wearing sunglasses, smoking leisurely. He didn't put Lin Yi in his eyes at all. Even when Lin Yi walked over, he didn't look at him. The warning from a Jade made Lin Yi subconsciously alert. How could it be so coincidental? It made Lin Yi feel that something was wrong. Logically speaking, the people who came here to eat were people of high status. Even if these gangsters were overbearing, they wouldn't cause trouble for no reason. Could it be that these people were plotting something? However, Lin Yi didn't have any strength now. He didn't want to expose his weakness, so he could only endure his anger and knock on the white Nissan van's window. What the fuck? The bald man opened the window and blew a mouthful of smoke on Lin Yi's face. "I want to go out. Can you please move the car?" Lin Yi had a feeling of being bullied by a dog. In fact, even if Lin Yi lost his strength, there were many ways to kill these ordinary people. In many cases, assassins didn't rely on their own strength to kill people, but on their skills. But in public, Lin Yi couldn't kill these gangsters because of this, right? It would also be difficult for Lin Yi to get away. Go out? Go out for what? I'm waiting for people." The bald man turned a deaf ear to Lin Yi's politeness and directly refused. "You wait for people, but I want to leave." Lin Yi didn't expect that he didn't want to cause trouble, but trouble came to the door. "I'm waiting. Can't you wait for a while too?" The bald man waved his hand impatiently. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get out of here." Lin Yi frowned. There was a trace of ruthlessness in his eyes. He said, "Isn't it wrong for you to do this? I don't want to cause trouble, but don't force me." Lin Yi wasn't a cowardly person. What would people think of him if he were to hold back and let them do what they'd think? the first thing they would suspect would be that he had lost his strength. Otherwise, why would he retreat? Therefore, he couldn't endure it. He could only catch up. No matter how weak he was, he had to pretend. At this moment, he suddenly realized how painful it was for someone who didn't have the strength to put on a show. What did you say? We're not leaving yet. After the bald man heard Lin Yi's words, he also became ruthless. He directly pulled out the car key and got out of the car. Following the bald man, 5 people who looked like gangsters got out of the van. I'll say it again. I don't want to cause trouble today. Don't force me. He said faintly. I'm forcing you. What can you do about it? The bald man didn't seem to care about Lin Yi's threat at all. He locked the car and turned around to leave with his people. He moved. He moved like lightning and grabbed the back of the bald man's neck. With these fighting skills, he could also put them down. Chapter 9:14. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat as he felt that something wasn't right. The baldy's skills weren't ordinary. How could he be an ordinary hooligan? Even though Lin Yi's strength was almost depleted and the injuries in his body hadn't healed yet, his speed and agility weren't as good as before. It was still more than enough to deal with ordinary people. However, Lin Yi's attack didn't even hit the target. What did this mean? Either Lin Yi was weaker than an ordinary person, or the baldy wasn't an ordinary person. Lin Yi knew his own condition very well, so the latter was the only possibility. The baldy was also a master. Of course, this master wasn't a practitioner, but a master who was much stronger than ordinary people. However, if the baldy wasn't an ordinary hooligan, why would he appear here? And it was obvious that he was here to cause trouble for him. Apologize. The baldy looked at Lin Yi coldly. I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. Either kneel down and apologize to me, or I'll let my men beat you until you kneel on the ground. Lin Yi took a deep breath. It was premeditated. The enemy must have planned this. It was too much of a coincidence, as if they were putting on a show. Lin Yi didn't know what to do. Was it sent by Zhang Jun to test whether he was injured or not? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. It seemed that he couldn't deceive others with just his appearance. If others suspected him, they would use their own methods to test him. It seemed like that was the case now. Lin Yi was in a dilemma. If he endured it, the baldy would definitely know that he hadn't recovered his strength yet. Anyone who paid attention would be able to see that he wasn't as strong as before. Otherwise, how could he make the baldy dodge his attack? If he didn't endure it, the baldy would still know about his strength. However, there was no need to endure it anymore. No matter what, his strength was exposed, and there was no need for Lin Yi to hide anymore. Let's see who will kneel in the end. As Lin Yi spoke, his body moved, and he appeared behind the bald man like a ghost. With a swift and fierce chop, the bald man howled and instantly knelt on the ground. These were some of the assassination methods that Lin Yi had used to save his life, including the footwork just now. It was a set of Qin Gong that Lin Yi almost never used. It was a trump card that he would only use when he had no other choice. Motherfucker, brothers go. He dared to hit Brother Baldy. Let's cripple him. Several of Baldy's underlings clamored as they surrounded Lin Yi. Can't you tell what's going on? Your boss has already knelt down. A few seconds ago, he wanted me to kneel down. Lin Yi looked at Baldy's subordinates. Drive your car away. I don't want to argue with you. Lin Yi had already exposed his strength. The only thing he could do now was to talk to Chu Pingzhan and ask him to find a bodyguard to replace him. Otherwise, he would bring a lot of trouble to Chu Pingzhan if he stayed in Songshan. Of course, he hoped that these gangsters weren't Zhang Ingjuan's men and it was just a coincidence. This isn't the time for you to argue. You touched our boss, so you have to stay. One of Baldy's underlings pointed at Lin Yi. Otherwise, we won't be able to show our faces in the future. Fine. Lin Yi had no choice. His strength will be exposed sooner or later. The phantom Qin Gong and the chop just now could confuse the enemy to a certain extent, making them unable to see his strength clearly. The speed of phantom Qin Gong couldn't be achieved by those who didn't practice it. However, Lin Yi's technique was an exception. That chop was the most common fighting technique, but there wasn't a trace of chi in it. This way, although the enemy would be suspicious of the chop, they would be afraid of Lin Yi's phantom qigong. They wouldn't be able to guess Lin Yi's strength in such a short time. When they were suspicious, it would create precious time for Lin Yi. But now, Lin Yi couldn't confuse them anymore in front of so many people. He could defeat these people with fighting techniques and not his strength. He believed that he wouldn't be able to fool those people. Half a minute later, Baldy's underlings were the same as Baldy. They all kneeled on the ground and groaned. Lin Yi didn't do anything to them. He only broke some of their limbs and ribs. This was the punishment they deserved. Lin Yi found the car, key from Baldy's hand. He moved his Nissan van away and returned to his car. He drove away. During this time, not a single security guard appeared. This meant that this matter was unusual. Lin Yi had to prepare as soon as possible. Phew! Tang Yin looked at Lin Yi, who got in the car unscathed, and let out a sigh of relief. Didn't you say that you lost your strength? You scared me to death. Even if I lost my strength, I'm still a bit stronger than ordinary people. Lin Yi smiled. He didn't want Tang Yin to worry, so he didn't say his suspicions. These people are despicable. Tang Yin didn't know that this was a premeditated provocation. Where are we going now? Tang Yin didn't feel the approaching danger. She was still immersed in happiness. She looked forward to the future and the beautiful days she would have with Lin Yi. A man farming and a woman weaving, holding hands and growing old with him. Let me send you back to the hospital. I still have some things to take care of before I leave. I won't have time to look for you these 2 days, Lin Yi said. Oh, Tang Yin was a bit disappointed, but she didn't say it out loud. Lin Yi had his own things to do. Tang Yin wouldn't bother him like that. Lin Yi stopped the car in front of the hospital. Tang Yin, who was sitting in the passenger seat, didn't want to leave. She held on to Lin Yi's hand. She didn't know when they would meet again. Tang Yin didn't want to let go. Lin Yi was her first love and the firm choice she made in her life. Although it was short, it was unforgettable. Then, I'm leaving. Be careful. Tang Yin knew that this wasn't the time to be affectionate. Although she didn't want to, she still let go of Lin Yi's hand and prepared to get out of the car. Okay, I'll wait for you to find me, Lin Yi smiled. Okay. Tang Yin opened the door and got out of the car. She turned around and quickly kissed Lin Yi's cheek. Then, she turned around and ran away with a red face. Tang Yin had used her actions to prove her sincerity. Tang Yin was a conservative girl. She took the initiative to kiss Lin Yi. In her heart, she already saw herself as his woman. Lin Yi touched the place where Tang Yin kissed and couldn't help but smile. This was a girl who deserved to be protected for life, wasn't she? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.